A little.
Hello and welcome to the IronGeek podcast. Today we have a very special guest, the angry tranny herself, Autumn. How you doing today, Autumn?
It's been good, and you?
I'm doing well. We've also got, of course, some tech articles. We're going to talk a little bit later about the whole Richard Stallman free software foundation thing, along with how some threat actors have set up legitimate-looking websites trying to trick threat researchers. All very fun things. But I think to start off with, we will start interviewing Autumn, and I hope you are willing to stay with us after the interview and just keep shooting the shit. You know, always feel free to interject. We are very disorganized, and
we're very good at shooting the shit.
We are very good at shooting the shit. I think most people actually tune in not for the InfoSec stuff, just to hear us bullshit, which we are exceedingly good at. We even have our like radio voices that we use, where like I'm talking now, where I'm randomly enunciating words so that it sounds like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Lots of people who think they're smart do this. Anyway,
I have a face for radio, so you know.
Yes,
I'm right there with you.
Well, all right, so with our show notes just going off today, we're going to be later talking about how a Russian hacker plotted a Tesla USB stick trying to get Tesla employees to install stuff, how a suspected North Korean hacker company was set up, essentially targeting threat researchers and trying to trick them into sharing and disclosing vulnerability data. Also going to talk about how about 40% of ransomware families are now using encryption. And, of course, we're going to talk about malicious Docker containers and the Ziggieware ransomware gang offering refunds to victims. But first, before any of that, let's talk to Autumn. Autumn, how you doing?
Pretty good. Are we going to talk about my computer knowledge and all that, which I don't actually have?
It's okay. I'll teach you computer things.
Okay.
Well, if you don't know anything about computers, then you could easily come in here and be an InfoSec expert.
Exactly. We have lots of InfoSec experts who don't actually know anything about InfoSec at all. All they do is they shit post on Twitter, and they have a huge following, and they talk shit about InfoSec conferences and talk about how, you know, our conferences aren't inclusive enough and that we need to change and be better. But
don't forget certifications.
Oh yes, we have a bunch of useless certifications people get that don't justify them actually knowing anything, and then they go out and get jobs as people who end up managing InfoSec companies and employees, and they don't actually understand the technology at all, but they have a certificate that says they do.
Interesting. Well, hopefully while I'm on, I can transplain a little bit and explain some things.
Transplain, I like that one. I don't think I've heard that before.
Yeah, you know, just when a trans person tells this person how to live their life. Those damn trans people, always enforcing their beliefs.
Well, now, sometimes it's a good thing. I mean, trans people tend to have really good advice on hair care products.
Especially Autumn. I mean, look at that hair.
I mean, I wouldn't mind. I've had trans people tell me, you know, you should use tea tree oil and then, you know, do this. And God, my hair used to be this like wretched curly looking thing that looked like it crawled out of it. It looked like I had a giant like merkin on my head. And until a friend of mine told me how to, you know, fix that problem.
I was going to say this is a wig, but it obviously doesn't look like a wig.
Yeah, it fits your face too well to be a wig.
Damn it. You'd be surprised what I can do with a wig.
There are some pretty amazing wig techniques out there. I've seen some scary. I've seen people pull off their wigs and be like, you know, whoa, shocker.
Do any of you know who Blair White is?
Of course. We've talked about Blair White on our cast before. Adrian's actually a big Blair White fan. I even had her give a little cameo to Adrian, and she shouted out to him, which was cool.
Oh, cool. There's an episode where she was like, I'm an SJW now, and she had this light pink wig, and she pulled off, and I was like, oh, I thought you colored your actual hair. And no, it wasn't. It was a wig. I was like, that's pretty good.
Indeed.
It's so sad when people self-identify as an SJW.
Yeah, that's kind of like what Why would you choose to? So, to be fair, I used to self-identify as an SJW. That was a long time ago, before the name, like the meaning of the word completely changed. And it's now used as like a derogatory term, talking about people who have like vested interest in identity politics and critical race theory and all these other things that are very far to the left. Back when I was doing it, it was kind of tied to the whole hacktivist scene. It was like, we're going to go into face websites of fucking corporations that say stupid shit, man. We're going to be badass hackers. But
and we never were, we never were.
I mean, the coolest.
Only one person I know out of the entire hacking scene has ever taken the hacktivism thing to its like full potential.
Maybe
that was Oxblood Ruffian of CDC.
You know him?
Oh yeah. And he's like the most, okay, he and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. We don't agree on a lot of things. But when it comes to hacktivism, he's like the de facto example of what it should be. And I've always respected his work, even if I don't agree with a lot of his philosophies.
Wow. The unlikes reached this podcast before it began. What speed. Oh, that's great.
I like to separate people these days into social justice advocates and social justice warriors. And I think that makes it a lot easier to, get the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No,
it's like a social justice advocate is out there doing social justice work. And a social justice warrior is just out there virtue signaling and trying to make a name for themselves.
Exactly. I think we also need better words. I think so. Anything that says social justice in it anymore is kind of tainted, even though the concept itself is great when you're talking about the actual definition and not what it's being used for now. I think we need to come up with new terms. Keep changing the terms and confuse everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an individualist, so I really don't care.
You don't?
Yep. And like I said,
I'm individualism means you see people as they are, not as in groups or labels or any other piece of crap that they try to throw out there. That's crazy. It's not rational to me. I just see people as individuals. That's it.
Yep. I took it one step further, and I say like I'm a humanist.
Ooh, humanists.
And,
so humanists and atheists tend to run in the same circles a lot, and sometimes butt heads.
You'd be surprised. I'm not atheist, but I am agnostic.
Oh, yeah. I have a friend who could definitely convince you you're atheist. His name.
Well, no, you couldn't, because it really works like this. An atheist says there is no God. A theist says there is a God. An agnostic says, I don't have a bastard clue. There may be one, there may not be one. I don't know.
That's where Silverman.
And that's where I am. I don't know if there is a God or not, and I don't have any faith there one way or the other. I've got nothing that substantiates either stance for me. So I'm just out here doing my thing.
Let's do a little role play here. All right, Autumn, you're David Silverman, and Arthur, you're just Arthur. So.
Oh shit.
Okay, well, how about I just be Autumn, because I can't do David Silverman's argument.
All right.
I guess I can open up with one of my favorite lines from David Silverman. What was your name again?
Arthur.
What would it take to change your mind?
Change my mind about what? The existence or non-existence?
On being on the terms of atheist, agnostic, and theist.
Go to school, rewrite the Oxford Dictionary, and then hand me a new copy of it.
Okay. Let's do that then.
Well, I mean, I like to believe that we need if we're going to debate anything, we have to have a common ground to start from. And I like to think of a dictionary as a common ground of accepted defined words, where cat means meow, dog means woof, cow means moo, in simple terms, so that we have a place to stand from and a way to communicate with each other.
Oh, we've got an interesting person who wants to join the cast. Let's let him in. Tom, I'll shoot you a link on Facebook Messenger, and you can join right in.
Can I share screens?
You can.
Okay, so I will share my screen real quick to show. But the Oxford Learner's Dictionary, which is the go-to for the Oxford, is an atheist being
Okay.
noun is a person who does not believe that God or gods exist. I would go further and say that the term atheist actually literally means without belief in deityism. A meaning without as a prefix for in the English language. You can find this also in
Excellent.
many lexicons. Theist meaning a belief in deities. And then you
Can I
have
just
deist.
break in here for a second and say you are incredibly awesome?
Sure. Yeah, you can say
Okay,
that.
because I've been waiting for somebody to come at to bring that level of yes to this argument because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You actually read the dictionary and understand what I'm talking about. That's amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love lexicons. I read lexicons sometimes too much. But there's also deist, which is just the belief that there is a deity out there. It's just kind of like a hands-off thing. Agnostic is the belief that there's no way to know whether or not there is a deity, or really any form of mysticism. Atheist and agnostic are not exclusive from one another, so they actually work in tandem. So you can be a strong atheist, which is just there is no God, or you can be like a weak atheist, which is like an agnostic atheist, which is I don't have a belief in a deity, atheist, and then you have, but I don't know if there is or isn't a God, and I can't prove that there is or is no deities. So that would be agnostic. So you have agnostic theism and Gnostic being the belief that it can be known.
Where
Theism.
would I fit then? Where would I, as a person who's
Sure.
I have no idea. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and I'm keeping an open mind about it. How would you define that then? What word should I use?
Do you believe that there's any deities out there? Yes or no?
I have no idea. I have no
do you have
definitive
any
proof to
belief
say
in
yes
them?
or no. Do I personally have a belief? I've never seen anything that would make me believe in them, but that doesn't mean that proof is not out there.
Exactly.
I haven't seen it yet.
That
I
would
haven't seen it yet.
That would be like a weak atheist. So you're just that's like how I am. I'm
It's like if tomorrow morning, Thor knocks on my door and says, "Hey, guess what? We exist." Okay, guess what? Okay, I'm down.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hook
If
up
I go to the
Thor and
coffee
your door
shop
now.
and
Here seems to be one of the core things that I think maybe you're getting hung up on. You're acting from a position that one of those beliefs is immutable; it cannot change, which is simply not true. Atheism, from my understanding and kind of how I approach it, is that there is no God, but you still are open to the possibility of there being one if there is proof given to you. Agnosticism tends to have a little more apathy in it in terms of there may be God, may not be God, maybe you don't know, and maybe you just don't care kind of look on it.
well, I mean,
So
think of it like the Higgs
my
boson,
perspective on it.
okay?
I'll
Think
jump
of it like
in
the
a little
Higgs,
bit here.
okay? Have you seen the
guys?
Higgs?
Guys, let Tom talk. He just joined.
So, by the way,
Okay.
thanks guys for allowing me to be on the show. I am
You're
not
great.
meant to be here. I'm technically not supposed to be here. I was not planned to be here. I saw this on Facebook, found the YouTube link, and then just commented that I can comment on this. But thanks, Frank, for inviting me. So I know a little bit on this. There's no apathy involved in agnosticism at all. Agnosticism is just the premise that you don't really know if a God exists or not, and you can be an atheist and still have an agnostic position on the certainty or not of a God's existence. For example, I'm an atheist because I don't believe in a God. If I was believing in a God, if I believed that a certain God existed, I would be a theist, but I'm not. So therefore, by the English language, that makes me an atheist by the definition of what an atheist is. But I also am not certain about that. I don't know everything in the universe. I don't really know if there was some starting mover or supernatural element that began the universe, and therefore that means I'm agnostic about God's existence, but I'm still an atheist. The reason why the whole term agnostic has become kind of popular, especially recently, is because it's been sort of a nice soft term for people to use. Atheist sounds abrasive. It sounds absolute. It sounds that you're making a definitive statement, like, I know that there's absolutely no God. When in reality, most atheists actually hold what people would consider to be the agnostic position, but they don't believe in God, so they also fit the atheist definition. I would argue that you're an atheist because you don't believe in a God, you're not exactly certain if a God exists or not. That doesn't matter. That's just a whole different question.
Yeah, and that's the point I was making, is that they don't exist in vacuums. They all have room for movement one way or the other. So you can't say, just because you can be an atheist even presented with the untangible concrete evidence of a deity, you can still be an atheist. I mean, you're kind of a dumbass at that point, because you're flying in the face of logic and reason, but you can still be an atheist in that sense.
Nathan, I like your comment.
Same.
Like the
I love
Hulk.
Christopher Hitchens.
Like the Hulk, and I forget which one of the comic book movies it was, where the Hulk grabs Loki by the foot, smashes him around, and says "Beauty God" and walks away.
So, also, by the way, love the comments everyone's giving here. Not supposed to be here. If you guys want me to leave in a moment, I can leave in a moment. I got something to do in an hour, 45 minutes anyways. But this seems to be a really nice show. It was either between this or Jack Brasobiak speaking to the Metropolitan Club, and I chose this because we got two great, awesome activists. One who's a guest and one who is, I guess, a show host, Frank.
I don't think Autumn likes that term.
No?
I
Okay.
like being called an activist.
Well, it sounds very progressive, right? It sounds very lefty. An activist,
Not
right?
because of that, but because if I continue saying I'm a journalist, I can't exactly put
Say you're
into-
right. You have to kind of
Yeah.
separate the practices. Okay, supporter then.
Yeah, because I see journalists saying that they're activists, and it's just like, okay, then you're not a journalist. You're an activist. Like, I love Christopher Hitchens, for example, but when was the last time anyone read an actual news report without his opinion in it?
Well, for 10 years that's been the case, because sadly he's died. But I'm going to also plug. Can I do a plug, Frank? Am I allowed to do a plug on your show?
Sure, do a plug on
Okay.
my show.
By the way, I don't know the hierarchy of this. I am intruding. I am coming in here. This is not
you're fine.
my
You can
space right
chill.
now.
Well,
But,
You've got to be welcome here, otherwise they wouldn't have pushed the button to let you in.
well, thank you. I do appreciate that. But
So, you
I
know,
wanna-
there's
so,
that
So I
to
saw
consider.
Nathan's comment. I saw a bunch of other comments for people that are watching this. I'm in here representing an organization called Atheists for Liberty, or a 501c3 nonprofit. That
Oh,
cares about
yeah,
free
I've heard of them.
free thinking and freedom for all. We are an atheist organization that wants to continue what the atheists and the atheist movement originally started, but unlike a lot of the other organizations that have fell to wokeness and sensitivity and political correctness, we're not embracing any of that stuff. We're continuing on with the original mission with a great coalition of people with diverse views. And you can find us at atheistforliberty.org. We got a Twitter, we got Facebook, we got pretty much all regular forms of social media. You can find us at Atheists for Liberty. We'd really appreciate all your support, because we love these kind of conversations and the kind of atmosphere. And anything with Frank or Autumn in it, it's usually quite a good thing. And I'm very glad to be on here to give this little plug and at least a little explanation for atheism and agnosticism. Thanks for that.
Let me. I'd like to throw a question at you then, just because it's something that's very important to me. Where do you stand on the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights?
Overall, I'm a bit of a history buff. Overall, I actually do like the concept. The Allied nations after World War II came together and, with Eleanor Roosevelt's help, drafted up the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I view it as something that's good. I think all people should be treated fairly, or treated by what I would consider to be sort of a Western standard of how we usually treat people in the civilized world. Obviously, there are cultures that are different and nations that behave differently. And obviously, I don't want to get into a debate over nationalism versus globalism or populism versus globalism. I'm not here for that. But overall, from just a standard of treating human beings fairly and treating them with respect, I like the overall premise and goal of what it was supposed to do back in the 50s and 60s.
Except for it's never enforced.
Yeah, but
do you
it's
see it?
Right? Yeah. Then you get into politics. I'm not getting it. I'm not going down there right now.
Do you see it applicable today?
To a degree, yes. It depends on the nation. It depends on the circumstance. And many people are, interesting that you're asking that question. A lot of people are saying that it doesn't, especially since the idea of nations globally getting involved in other nations' affairs is becoming increasingly unpopular.
Tom,
Fair enough.
Dickey says, from a historical context, devotee atheists are almost always pro-nation state. What's your reply to that?
I would concur. Just from my perspective, I'm a big fan of what the new atheists were all about as a response to 9/11. I'm a big fan of America's borders and America's sovereignty being protected, and our people being protected by ideologies and religions and beliefs and motives of groups that want to destroy our country and the freedoms and principles that we have. I don't want people and militants with an entirely different belief system trying to come in and kill our people and destroy our values and destroy our country. I just think that's a horrible thing. I think it's horrible. Speaking of human rights, not a good thing for human rights, not a good thing for the well-being of people. So I would agree with that premise. Richard Dawkins, let's look at the most famous atheist, for example. He got involved in the debate about religion because he started to see in British schools and in the British education system more and more mysticism and what he would consider to be nonsense taught in the British school system. Sam Harris thought of the same thing, just with U.S. politics. Christopher Hitchens thought of the same thing, just with U.S. politics, etc.
Yeah, because it was like, I think there's a quote from Hitchens, I think in one of his books, I had to look, but he was asked why he became a journalist. He's like, well, he explained why he became a journalist, and it's also because like he would look into the newspaper all the time, and you see how people are implementing their politics or the religion into the society, and self-defying it with their toxic ideas.
The one thing I think it's funny is that when people say things are ridiculous, like that religion is ridiculous, that idea is ridiculous, I always have to turn around and point out to the people who are saying that, yeah, but look what you believe in. I mean, from a realistic point of view, from a realist point of view, what you believe in is pretty ridiculous too.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, what's so ridiculous about, wanting to, take care of your neighbor and this and that and that? And I say, okay, transubstantiation. What the hell? Okay. So you're telling me that you're taking this piece of bread and you chant over it and it becomes flesh and you eat it.
Yeah.
That's a little weird.
It's a little weird.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's a little weird on the scale of, hamburger and milkshake versus piece of bread that's turned into a person's flesh. It's a little weird.
Yeah. I was raised Catholic, so I saw this firsthand.
And a lot of and then the inherent, I don't even want to say blasphemy, but some of the inherent contradictions in religion. It's like people love to go around touting their religion, but they don't live it.
Yeah,
they don't live it.
It is certainly the case, and then what they do is they take a warped version of whatever they've been raised to believe, and then try to inject it into public policy. Hence why.
And not only that, but what they're raised to believe is warped in the first place, because you see the people running around waving Bibles, and you say, which one? And they go, what do you mean? There's only one. I'm like, no, that happens to be a King James in your hand. And before the King James, there were a few other revisions, and maybe you hadn't noticed, but a lot of the people who called themselves kings had it rewritten to suit their needs,
to suit their own need, their own stuff. And then a lot of stuff with Christianity started to pop up 300 years after the proclaimed life of Jesus, or lifespan of Jesus of Nazareth. That's just Christianity, right? It really comes to show how much of a contradiction religious belief is. I love this. I saw someone put in the comments, going back to interesting. I haven't seen one of these discussions in 10 years. It's a discussion, in my opinion, that still needs to be had. And the reason why you haven't seen it in 10 years is because people, sadly, in many ways, go by trends. The trend is, the atheism discussion, that's so like 2010. Oh, that's so 2012. When in reality, just because a trend is different on the internet and in the meme sphere, right, of 2021, doesn't mean that this really important discussion still should be had. It still should be had.
You're giving social justice warriors a means to continue talking about their bullshit.
Well, the social justice warriors are around now, so we can't talk about if God exists or not anymore. I think we can.
Well, that's true right now.
I think if we simply disempower them, okay, we were the ones. I mean, I say we. I mean everyone in general have given power to the social justice warriors, and we give them the ability to take away our jobs or to censor us or what we can say and can't say. We did that in, I believe, okay, my opinion only, I believe that at the beginning, it was a good-hearted gesture to listen to them. And, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry, I won't say that. And then certain members of that group realized that that gave them power that they lacked before. And it comes into something interesting. I think I call it boot theory. It's like if a person's had a boot on their throat, okay, and you take that boot away, it doesn't mean they split into two unique groups. People who think no one should ever have a boot on a throat ever, and people who say if there's ever going to be on a boot on a throat, it's going to be my boot on somebody else's throat.
Yeah,
And they're psychologically, they both make sense. But the thing is, that's the difference. That's the wedge I see that's separating social justice advocates who say there should be no boots on throats, and social justice warriors who are like, we should be the boots on your throat for a change.
Overall, I think that's a pretty good argument, especially since, there are people who do technically call themselves, progressives and advocates of social change right on the left, who do genuinely hold those beliefs, but simultaneously will not engage in, say, cancel culture, won't engage in certain things like that. Richard Carrier is a pretty good example of that. He was the one who coined the term atheism plus, but he's gotten better now, actually, especially after a lot of the woke people and social justice warrior types went after him. He kind of makes that argument too, that he believes in true social justice, and that all these other wackadoodles, they really don't. I think you also are right when you talk about how it was kind of a good-hearted argument in the beginning. The atheist movement, believe it or not, was the first movement to actually be on the internet and in Western culture to really be swept by this sort of modern age wokeness, a sort of third, fourth wave.
Tom, I'm glad that you touched on that point, because that's something I actually wanted to talk about today. I was actually going to talk about it with Autumn later, but I'll bring it up a little bit early. So there's a really big parallel between what happened with the Atheism Plus movement, right, where they had their elevator gate, and then the entire scene changed, and also with InfoSec, which is what most of the people who watch this cast care about. In InfoSec, information security, computer security shit, we have conferences like DEF CON. DEF CON is held in Vegas. It's infamous for being like a really fun con where anything can happen. But that anything can happen usually doesn't apply to people like being uncomfortable, or, they've done things like where we had Hacker Jeopardy, right? And one of the wives of one of the people who ran it dressed up like a stripper, and all fun was had by all, consent was given by all, but people were offended because a woman was sexualized, right? And we've seen one of our favorite conferences in InfoSec that's called DerbyCon was arguably ruined by social justice warriors, to the point where the conference organizers no longer want to do the con, and they just canceled it. It doesn't happen anymore. Now that's the opinion of a lot of people. It's not everybody's opinion. And of course, the conference organizers are not going to publicly come out there and say that. Otherwise, their businesses are going to get destroyed by these same people. We've had things in our community where there was a group of hackers who had a Facebook group called IllMob, and they would post stupid shit in there, like memes and things that they found funny amongst themselves. And sometimes it was misogynistic or sexist or racist or whatever. A bunch of guys getting together, essentially doing the same thing they do if they're hanging out at a bar shooting the shit, but doing it online. Journalist gets in there. He takes screenshots. He writes an article. Now you have people calling up the jobs of the people in this group, trying to get them fired with these screenshots, and successfully. And
don't forget the database that they used at DEF CON.
Yeah,
right. Why don't you talk about that, Arthur?
Basically, what happened was, as an offshoot of that, a person working with the reporter, I believe, created a database of the names, of the Facebook names and identities of all the people that were part of IllMob. And a person at DEF CON went through that list and basically disassociated anyone whose name was on that list as a volunteer or an employee of DEF CON. And poof, they were gone. Whether they did it directly, indirectly, through making up stories or things like that, that's how it came down. And it's easy to talk about it, but I can say, and say, well, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I can tell you it happened to me personally. And about Ilmob, I like the idea of saying it was like hanging out at a bar. But the thing is that there were edgelords in that place that went there just for no other reason than to throw down misogyny and anti-trans and horrible things just to see people freak out. They were doing it to be edgelords.
To troll.
And sorry?
To troll. They were trolling.
To troll. Yeah, they were trolling. And the thing is, people who were in there knew a troll from a troll, but this reporter didn't know a troll from a handbasket, and thought that, these people really think this way. And there were a lot of people who justifiably were were called on the carpet for what they said and did, but there were a lot of people who were considered to be guilt by association. You were in the same bar as the guy who said death to all gay people, therefore you must believe that and like it. Kafka trap. And it simply wasn't true. But the social justice warriors had so much power from either being in a power position or being a voice, being louder than you are, that everyone got creamed.
Right.
So, guys, we're going to continue this conversation for about another 10 minutes, and then I am going to redirect because tonight's podcast is titled The Angry Tranny, and I do want to actually ask her a bunch of questions that I've put together for her. But I do like the flow we've gotten into. I don't want to, stop it. I just want to make sure we do give her some camera time and the ability to answer the questions that we've put together.
And I'll step out then when that time comes, because I'm merely a guest to answer this kind of stuff. Really appreciate the fact that Frank, you got me in. I didn't even ask to come in. I just said I could answer the question, but Frank, you brought me on, so kudos to you. And you guys are great to talk to. This is really, really cool. I'm an Orthodox Jew and practice Orthodox Judaism is most religious. Why am I wearing this?
So
that's a funny comment, Jason.
Probably because the hat gives you some extra money.
One thing I got to say is that, very similar, Frank, like you talked about the parallels between what happened in both the atheist community and the InfoSec community, is that, the atheists swoop with a lot of nerds as well. And that's why we're probably, both audiences here kind of have a lot of the same experiences and probably heard of Elevator Gate and Atheism Plus and that kind of stuff. So again, putting in a little plug, if anybody's interested in being part of an atheist organization that is not woke, that is not filled with social justice warriors, that will not bend to woke bloggers or far radical feminist people or far BLM people, liberals, libertarians, conservatives who are normal on the left-right political spectrum who are anti-woke, want to accomplish shared goals. That's what we're doing at Atheists for Liberty. You check us out at atheistsforliberty.org. We got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We have Parler. We have, I think we even have a Gab. We have a members-only Discord server, Facebook group. Membership is $10 a year, $5 for students. $10 a year, $5 for students. You can donate more if you want, but you don't have to. $10 a year. So if you're interested, feel free to join us. By the way, Frank, if you ever want to come into our servers, you can advertise InfoSec too. I do not want to be a hypocrite. And you guys seem to be really, really cool. So
real quick, would you like to be a guest on next week's cast so I can just have you come on? Then we can have Autumn come on and talk, and she will interrupt your time, but it'll be fun still.
That's great. Autumn can come in here and interrupt me next time. Autumn, you want to do that?
We're going for equality of equity here, not just equality.
Well, it's not really interrupting if a trans person is interrupting a cis white male.
Exactly. You're just fighting back against the
bigotry, the patriarchy, technically.
The patriarchy.
That's assuming that we're all cis white males,
except for me.
Well, what I am saying right now is why SJWs unite, because they hate normal people like us. So let's have the normal people unite.
I'm so far from normal.
Normies unite.
Okay, normal weirdos. Okay, weirdos who don't think that everyone is racist and don't think that there are a million genders. How about that? There we go. That's the bar.
A million, no.
A million genders. 10,000.
I had to self-invent what I am because it didn't exist, and I reduced it to GNCH, gender non-conforming humanist, which means you can do whatever the hell you want because you're a human being. You can express yourself in the way that you feel you should, and I don't have any right to tell you yay, no. If I don't like it, I don't participate. And if I like it, then I'll participate. But I can't tell you what you can and can't do.
I like that view.
Why would you be a humanist? Because eventually we may find other intelligent life out there, and then you can't.
I haven't seen it yet. I'll include it.
Intelligence or something.
I will gladly include it.
Maybe there'll be an argument for human supremacy. Maybe
Why not
the alien life out
egalitarian?
there in the future will be like want to kill all humans. You know, again,
Maybe
I'm
this
setting
is why the
myself up
aliens
for
haven't
potential
contacted
failure.
us yet.
To be fair, if a society is at least one on the scale, I can't remember it's like some Russian guy. If it's even a one on the societal scale,
Civilization scale, right?
yeah, there's like I think 4 or 5, and it's like Star Wars is like 4, Star Trek is 3, etc. We're like a 1. We're like a 0.9, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think
We still
like,
kill
any-
each other over sneakers. Okay, I don't think we're
True.
anywhere near Star Trek yet.
But if we have like UFOs have been coming and abducting people, and they can change the weather, and if they can do all this stuff, they would be united. They would not see any logical point in killing us. I don't think.
Yes. So we got to band together and we got to advance ourselves.
We got to kill those aliens.
We got to
Earth
develop our
xenophobes,
technology.
man.
We gotta
The aliens
expand
take one look at
our-
us and say, we're good. Let's just leave this one alone.
They see us our tribalism, and they're like, "Fuck that shit."
They can be like,
So these people aren't even ready
before
yet.
They advance too much.
Let's build a wall around the Earth to prevent aliens from coming in, real aliens, and we'll put solar panels to pay for it.
Hey, you know what? We did get Space
Can we
Force
make
this
Mexico
year.
pay
So
for it?
Well, just
Yeah,
so
make
FYI,
Mexico pay for the wall around the Earth.
There's actually plans to do a Dyson sphere for energy.
Ooh.
That's similar to putting a wall around there. They put a wall around the sun.
It would probably take 100 years to build a Dyson sphere around Earth if we were to try that.
Asteroid mining.
Oh, asteroid mining. Okay.
Yeah. I think asteroid mining is where it's at because there's like they had one asteroid that was worth 100 trillion times the GNP of the
Yeah,
entire
we can mine
planet.
that and destroy all of Earth's economy.
Well,
by having too much gold.
how much resources would it take to get that stuff though?
It's got to be less than less than its value.
That's always a consideration.
I mean, think
when
about
comes
it.
to
It's
getting
worth
energy.
more at today's price point anyway than all the money we currently have in circulation. So regardless of how much we spent to get to it, it would kind of even out.
Yeah, it would even out.
As soon
in
as
the
we
end.
got it
That's
and
not
got all that
all-
gold into circulation,
Let's
the
put
value
it.
of gold
Here's
would
a
go
great way of
If-
looking
if-
at it. Okay.
If you flood the world economy with gold and silver, the price is not going to remain static.
No, but you'll be
There's a
set for
peak
life.
value.
You're making the argument that the material is going to come down to Earth, and that would be foolish because it'd be more valuable to make it productive in space, build space factories,
Right.
use the materials in
Sorry.
space for expansion in the solar system. So
Look at it this way, okay? Elon Musk is trying to reach Mars, not build international rescue.
His wife?
He's trying to reach Mars, not
You
build
said Ellen,
international
not
rescue.
Elon.
Yeah, you said Ellen.
Elon,
Musk.
Ellen, yeah, well.
Who-
You know what?
who knows?
I'm American. I mispronounce everything. It's part
We
of our
live in a
culture.
very
never be
progressive
ashamed
era.
of mispronouncing a word or a name that means you learned it by reading.
Look,
Exactly.
we live in a very progressive era. For all we know, Elon could be Ellen.
So
You're going to pull the Wachowski brothers on us, are you? Is that how it works?
I plead the fifth.
I will pass so you guys can continue this discussion, and Frank, you can interview Autumn here. But I want to say, guys, thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're
Really
very welcome.
appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I'll be back on whenever you guys want me.
Awesome. You take it easy, Tom.
I plead the fifth of what I'm drinking.
There we go. Bye, Tom.
I was
Oh,
going to
right.
ask if he was
Now that
I didn't realize that there were people anyone who was on the Ilmob group was kicked off of working from DEF CON, especially considering one of the primary things that came out from the Ilmob discourse was a significant number of people who were in that group who didn't actually talk at all. Including
This is not about talks. This is about volunteers and people who work behind the scenes.
No.
A lot of
you
people,
understand.
a lot of people, quote unquote, retired. Some people just walked away. Some people were just shuffled off, and all of a sudden, well, we're replacing this with something else, or we're not going to do this anymore, so we don't need you anymore. And it was all handled very quietly and very casually.
You misunderstand what I meant. I'm
Okay.
saying a significant number of people who were in ILMOB didn't participate in discussions. A significant number of them were not edgelords in the slightest, including when I was trying to monitor the discourse on it. A number of people, even woke people, were saying, let's not jump to conclusions here. A lot of people were invited who didn't really pay attention to the actual conversation itself.
Yes. A lot of people were invited and didn't know. You can invite someone into a group on Facebook and they'd never know
They're
it.
saying even everyone, without exception, who was in ILMOB, who was who was volunteering in any capacity within DEF CON, was summarily removed.
Okay. Let's table that for now. I really want to get to
Yes
Autumn,
or
who's
no,
kind
or
enough
more
to
complicated than that. Was
That's fine.
Did I understand correctly?
Understood.
All
So
right.
I really want to start the interview of Autumn, who was kind enough to join us tonight.
Yay.
She does have a book coming out soon called The Angry Tranny, which will be available for purchase in many places, I assume. She is a journalist. She is many things. Why don't you give yourself an intro rather than me try and describe it for you?
Okay, I consider myself an Anglo-American journalist, social critic, and sometimes an orator from time to time, depending on like what comes my way. I would never call myself an activist as long as I remain a journalist. I'm also an author, authoring a few books, but yeah, The Angry Tranny. Also, you shouldn't have said that because you're not trans.
How do you know I'm not trans?
Dum.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Are you assuming my gender?
I am assuming your gender. I know when people are trans. I have a trans radar, and I can tell when people are trans, and you're not trans.
Well, maybe I am, and you just haven't seen me dressed up. I mean, maybe
he's so far in the closet he's finding
go
Christmas
with this
presents.
look so that I can fit in public around here.
Pretty sure you're autogynephilic. Let's just say that.
You're
That's like kind of trans, but not really trans.
So I'm going to make the assumption that it's not about auto mechanics because, the usual term for tranny means a transmission. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm not. I mean, so and that is the context I use tranny in.
I'm glad you bring that up because in her book, Autumn actually gets into that quite a bit. She talks about how I was fortunate enough to have her send me a little bit of the book before it's published, and she gets into how the word tranny kind of needs to be taken back because it's been used in a derogatory way. But I'm sure she could explain it much better than I can.
Yeah, so I have so just a little context to preface this. I was the editor-in-chief for my college paper, and I decided to, because no one could tell me no, I said, I'm going to start a column. We didn't have a column, and we had awards coming up, and I was like, you know what? I would like to win an award, and I did. I won 2 times in a row best columnist out of the papers participating, and the second column I started was actually The Angry Tranny, which Facebook has since banned multiple times because of the word tranny. I've had people tell me that I shouldn't use that word because it's similar to the N-word or any other word like that. And people have, quote unquote, booted people's heads into the curbs while calling them a tranny. And it's just like, well, it's kind of like the N-word or the swastika. If you continue thinking of it as this inherently sinister connotative word or context to the thing, you're never going to take it back. There was I remember watching 5 years ago a video on YouTube about this. It's like a Teesprings kind of thing. They had like the swastika on their shirt, but it wasn't like red with a white background and a black swastika. It wasn't the neo-Nazi or the Nazi Germany flag. Instead, it was just like the Eastern version of it, and it was people just don't take things back basically, and just be a little terse about it. And so I believe in taking the word back, giving it an actual meaning. It's also better than calling someone, oh yeah, I'm transgender. It's like, I'm a tranny. That's just faster. It's more concise. I prefer succinctness over loquacious. definitions and identities that people often give, like it's a Starbucks drink, where it gets extremely complicated.
You also it kind of cuts both ways too, because there was the derogatory use of calling certain people tranny chasers, a person who is interested in people in transition, and they would be called tranny chasers, and that was derogatory as well. But it wasn't always derogatory, because you will see a lot of tranny themed bars or transgender themed bars where they have a night called Tranny Chaser, and they would actually openly invite people who were curious or interested either in being or associating with to come down and be part of it.
Yeah. And to go off that point, it's I don't see anything wrong with tranny chaser. Just like tranny is being used in the context as transgender. Is this, if someone, like, even if someone, it's kind of like blackface. Like, people say blackface is inherently bad because of the historical context, but Robert Downey Jr.'s blackface was not racist. And even if it was making fun of black people, or you're making fun of trans people in this context of the situation, who cares? Just like grow a thicker skin, you know? It's just, there's no reason to get offended over all these minute issues.
Unless your goal is to be offended.
Yes,
People
in which
are
case
like
you will be offended.
Yeah, some people are offended for a living. That's what they do.
This is where they get things like microaggressions, and microaggressions, aggressions, and being offended lead to book deals and click-throughs. And I'm so angry, and next thing you know, you're getting more click-throughs and more ad revenue than you've ever seen before in your life.
Yep.
So you've got to be continuously offended and upset about something, otherwise they're going to move this to another somewhere else. Yeah, and there goes your book deal.
Yeah, well, luckily I don't have a book deal. I sent this to Dorrance Publishing.
I know this is not an accusation against you. I'm talking just in general to the world. Yeah. There are people out there who look to be offended because they profit from it, both socially, professionally, and monetarily. That is not an indictment on you and your book, but I'm saying there are people out there who act that way. Yeah. And their whole goal is, how offended can I be today in order to bolster my position, to make me more powerful.
Yeah, exactly. They rely on emotional knee-jerk responses, because it's in journalism. I'll get into this a little bit more, but in journalism, I don't know. Do any of you know, or any of your listeners know, what yellow journalism means?
Oh, yes,
old term.
Yeah, coined in the early 20th century, is a term. They word it like on. I think it's worded on Wikipedia like it's an old thing. But basically, what I learned in journalism school was that since the inception of the radio, journalism had been dying, because radio people could just turn on the radio without paying for a newspaper, and then they could hear the news. Then you had TV, CNN, making even worse. So then half of the profits went towards like CNN and the radio. Then the internet came out, and now you can basically get through paywalls, at least some of them. So journalism has been trying to survive for a while, and they haven't really. The problem with journalism is they haven't tried finding a new model that can work in a capitalistic society. Instead, they try to do what's easier, and they try to BuzzFeed everything with like sensationalism, like, I don't know if any of you know who James Damore is, but I interviewed James Damore when he came to Portland State University. And I called out the Willamette Week, which is in my column, which is a quote unquote alternative journalistic newspaper outsourced in Portland. And they basically said that James Damore was going to speak about why he thinks women can't presumably do math, and why they're biologically unfit to be engineers. And it's like, that's not what the memo says. And even if you thought that's what it says, that's still an opinionated verbiage being put into the headline and the article. And people do this because it's easy for journalism to survive. And people will do that with like getting offended, because people care about drama. Even when people say like, I am not for drama, most people are for drama. Even if
it's nice. It's polite to call that an opinion, but realistically, wouldn't you call that bigotry?
About James Damore in particular?
No, to say that the statement, that women can't be engineers. Doesn't that borderline at least on bigotry? I mean, yeah, you can pass it off as an opinion, but I mean, where's
opinions can still be one and the same. I would say it is definitely an opinion, because it's coming from their own psyche. It's not something that can be backed up by anything. Another thing I learned in journalism school is usually when if you look carefully, you can tell where something comes from a source and what doesn't. there's kind of a blurred line, but usually when a journalist sees something, they can report that as a fact, which is like not really that good, because if a journalist says they saw that in the article, then they can say it was a fact. But I would say saying like James Moore, for example, saying he said those things would be defamation or libel. I know Andy personally, and when before Andy actually was became more famous, he was working for the Portland State University Vanguard, and he had been called out by NPR, which is OPB, which is part of NPR, and a few other places, as a conservative troll and activist. He's not he wasn't really an activist, and he wasn't conservative. They were using that to dismiss him. He was actually in a Swedish interview about Antifa and the Freethinkers PSU. He actually called himself a centrist. And this is kind of why people don't trust journalism anymore. I don't.
Well, that brings me to Savannah Hernandez. She refers to herself as a right-wing reporter. I think
that's not.
What do you think about that? I mean, calling yourself a right-wing reporter as opposed to just a reporter. Why put that in there?
Because they think that I would say it's probably because they want to attract more clout from the right-wing audiences. Like, hey guys, I'm a reporter, but I'm on your side, and it's kind of like an olive branch. I don't think it's possible to be a right-wing reporter. You're either a reporter or you're not a reporter. Like Sean Hannity probably thinks he's a journalist. People think Anderson and Cooper is a journalist. They think Wolf Blitzer is a journalist. Really, these are not journalists. These are anchors. These are pundits. I would say if you are a reporter, don't mention where you lean. Just say, I'm a reporter, and just report the facts. And if you want to give your opinion on certain things, that's what op-eds and columns are for, or if you're giving a speech. But there should be no way where people can conflate your personal stances with your actual news writing. I've been very good, I think, personally, about writing articles and not putting my opinions. I'm not pro-life, but I've done pro-life stories. I've done pro-choice stories. I've covered LGBT stuff. I've covered anti-LGBT stuff too. I think if you're going to call yourself a journalist, just call yourself a journalist. There's no reason to input that you are left-wing, right-wing, or centrist or any of that shit.
Is it safe to say that the era of Woodward and Bernstein is dead?
Yes, very much so. The thing with I've actually met Bob Woodward. He's a really nice guy, very funny talker too. I met him in DC for a journalism conference, and I was really enthralled by his speaking skills and his past work. But he was actually, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I think it's dead. You have people will say stuff like Fox News is biased, but they'll read CNN. The articles from CNN and the articles from Fox News, those are not nearly as biased as the TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I know people who work for Fox News, and I've read some Fox News articles, and the articles are decently well written. I worked for the College Fix for a while, which is the right-wing-ish upper higher education freelancing outlet, if anyone knows who the College Fix is. And my editor, Greg Piper, was such an amazing editor. He was very careful about making sure everything was not biased and that things could be backed up by evidence. So I would say it's dead in the sense it's not widely used anymore. Because then you get listicles like BuzzFeed or David Silverman, who had a Me Too movement against him in a BuzzFeed article. They didn't even interview David Silverman. They just interviewed the two accusers, which is you have to have at least 3 sources. And if you're going to talk about sexual assault, you have to interview the person being accused of the sexual assault too. If you don't, that's not really journalistic ethics.
The thing is, these days the way I like to describe it is we're in an era of mob rule.
Mm-hmm.
And mob rule doesn't want to hear the side of the person who's been accused. You're guilty until proven less guilty, and we've already built the scaffold for you. The minute you're accused, that's the end of it. And anybody trying to say anything, even if it's not defending them, even if it's just saying give them a fair trial, no, you're going to get shouted. Oh, what are you? Are you trying to defend a person who did this horrible thing?
Yeah, you're a rape apologist.
I mean,
right? You're a rape apologist. That's one of the. I didn't want to go to rape because rape's one of the most common. It's kind of low hanging fruit. But I mean, in general, it doesn't have to be rape. It could be anything.
Well,
it could be a you're a pedophile.
Yeah.
we're re-entering the era of McCarthyism.
Well, that
Yeah.
behavior.
Just the accusation of being a communist was enough to destroy your life.
Right.
Whether or not it was true didn't matter.
Yeah.
Just the
Autumn actually
accusation.
got blocked by Blair White for asking for proof about.
I was
Jessica
just
Unieve.
about to mention that.
But
It's almost
here-
like we think the same way or on the same
Yeah.
wavelength.
that behavior is being seen even outside of sexual allegations or other gender roles too. I mean, that's one big thing happening right now with the Derek Chauvin trial. Is there's lots of evidence they're trying to say, oh, he's guilty. You know, we're just trying to have basically a farce of a trial kind of thing, even though that's absolutely not what criminal trials are about. So it's
Cardassian justice.
exactly. Yeah,
So you want to go?
I
You
just
want to go
wanna
all Star
touch on
Trek
Vicky's
about
comment
it?
here.
Yeah.
The book has not yet been published. It will be soon, so it is not out
Currently
there
being
to read yet.
rewritten and re-edited for more context. The book, The Angry Tranny, actually, I started it late last year and finished it, and then I kind of was not too happy with it. There are some things where I feel like I'm mimicking Christopher Hitchens and being very argumentative. I promoted the book as being more educational and giving my opinions. Like, for example, there'll be a chapter on gender and sex. I want people to read it, hear what I have to say, what does the evidence say, and also what does gender mean in the context of the far left activists, and what does it mean to people who do not subscribe to that? Like, just kind of providing context of things. And then I rewrote it again, and it was too polite, and I was like, okay, this is not going anywhere. So it's currently being re-edited at the moment.
Version 3.0.
Yeah, technically, yeah, version 3.0, which is very common with book writing, is rewriting and re-editing. But yeah, I got blocked by Blair White because she accused Jessica Unieve of being a pedophile, saying the pedophile Jessica Unieve was recently suspended on Twitter. And I asked, do you have evidence that Jessica Unieve is a pedophile? Because a pedophile, by definition, in professional use, is someone who has a sexual attraction to prepubescent children. I also think that even though I dislike Jessica Unieve a lot, I actually don't like use quotes when I use she in the book for Jessica. But I think using that term is just like Blair White's version of buzzwords and trying to discredit someone. While Jessica Unieve has done very questionable things like the pool party, I don't think that makes them necessarily a pedophile. And I think that using something like a pedophile can be very dangerous and it can potentially cause them to kill themselves. I'd rather have like an open discussion happen than just throwing labels around that could be arguably proven not true. Mostly because knowing Jessica Unieve being sue happy, I feared that Blair was going to be sued by Jessica Unieve for calling Jessica a pedophile as a form of defamation. And that's really where my questioning had come from, was the concern for Blair's safety.
You know, we have a problem with that in InfoSec right now.
Mm-hmm.
With Captain Crunch.
Oh yeah.
Who's
unfortunately is
been
in the hospital.
And also with Emmanuel Goldstein too.
Yeah,
People have spent years and years and years talking about about that. And one of the things that's kind of sad about that is some of it has rubbed off on the people who work with him or are part of it. They've been called associates or apologists, but there's never been any. It was like it wasn't even, and there wasn't even a trial. There wasn't even a formal accusation. It's just X is a pedophile, and it's like, okay, show me the proof, and there's never any proof. Now there's, in the case of Captain Crunch, there's anecdotal proof, and there's certain things that have come to be known, but a lot of times it's just the accusation is enough to tarnish a person for life.
Exactly. If Jessica is called a pedophile, people see that as like something you can't change. And if Jessica had somehow reformed into not trying to get people to wax her balls, her vagina, she wouldn't be able to reform because her entire reputation has been tarnished. And I think Blair genuinely believes that Jessica is a pedophile. I've seen all the videos by Blair. I don't think she had proven that. I actually spoke to Buck Angel, who's a trans man, and we talk from time to time, and He said he was going to get Blair to unblock me, but he said that Blair probably thought I was trolling, knowing Yaniv's supporters. But I still am blocked to this day. But it's just fine. I don't really like Blair White too much. He clickbaits too much.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that the idea of redemption, because that's the one thing that is the most silent issue, the most missing issue in the whole culture war. There doesn't seem to be any kind of redemption available for anyone. There's no, I used to be an X and now I'm not anymore. Or, people will apologize and then they'll get told that their apology was no good, or you apologize, but you're still a pedophile, or you apologize and you're still a racist or a bigot. And there's no road to redemption. There's no, and I'm not saying that's not true, but what I'm saying is that if a person made a mistake, okay, one of the most common mistakes is misgendering someone. Yeah. Okay, there's almost no road to redemption. Unless you've got a decent human being, a good person who says, I apologize for misgendering you. And it's like, I realize your mistake. It's difficult. Let me do this. Let me explain to you what this really means, versus the person who says, well, I don't have to explain myself to you. If you can't educate yourself, I'm not your teacher. So fuck you, you racist pig.
Yeah, I actually, I used to go to, there's this place here in Portland called the Q Center. It's exactly what it sounds like, the Queer Center. I used to go to before transition, I went to a trans femi meeting, and then I eventually went to the trans women meeting, and I was like, this is repulsive, this is horrible, it was always like the Portland police are white supremacists, or we got to fight back against Trump. It had nothing to do with being a tranny. And then I was told by my therapist to go back with my ex. And Matt and I both went there, and we were going around in a circle. And someone was like, yeah, this week I got misgendered by this dude at my work. And I work at Safeway. And I went crying to my boss and got him fired. And everyone was like, oh my God, girl, amazing. And I was just sitting there just awestruck and bewildered by it. I'm like, this is gross.
I got into trouble, and in all places, Manhattan, for a similar incident, but under different circumstances. Mm-hmm. We had a person who was in transition, was maybe 3/4 of the way through transition. I mean, there was just, unless you were really good or you really knew, there was no reading her. Mm-hmm. And somebody in the company found out and went to HR and made a giant stink. And the problem was this: HR, in my opinion, mishandled it. And HR went around and they interviewed each person in the company. It was a small company, about 75 people. And they were like, are you okay with this transgendered person working here? And my response was, actually, I'm not okay with the HR department doing this, because you should not be asking us if it's okay, if we're comfortable with a transgendered person working here, because that's just ridiculous. This is another human being. This is an employee. She does a hell of a good job at her job. She's good at her job. She's fun to be around, and, always a hit at the company parties. And, why are you calling her out and doing this to her? Yeah. I think it's an embarrassment to the company. And I'm frankly ashamed of you, HR manager, and I'm ashamed of the company for handling it this way.
Yeah.
And I got my ass handed to me.
Oh, shit.
I got my ass handed to me sideways. Now, this is the funny part, okay? Not only did I get my ass handed to me by the company, but I got a card from the person who this was all about that said, some of us don't appreciate the fact that we can be read.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't read you. Like, it wasn't like you had bad makeup. It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm a club DJ below 14th Street. I know 2/3 of the trans community in this city. I'm sorry, but it wasn't a big shock or surprise to me to find out that you were in transition. Yeah. And yet she was like all offended by that, and the fact that I knew, even though I stood up and said, you deserve better than this. You shouldn't be treated like this. So a lot of times it's a zero-sum game where you can't win no matter what you do, even if you have the best of intentions in mind.
Yeah. There was forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. But yeah, that's really messed up. That shouldn't have happened. A lot of trans people don't pass. I'll be honest, I don't like the trans label, mostly for different reasons. And while I don't like being called out, it's not like I was walking on college campus at Portland State University with my friend Patrick, and they'll have like sometimes the Christians will come by with their placards and they'll hold it up and be like, "You're going to damnation." I wanted to argue with them because I'm like, "Oh, fucking religion, yes." But when I was walking by, I was in the middle of a conversation with my friend Patrick, and then all of a sudden this guy was like, "Excuse me, ma'am," or "Excuse me, sir, why are you wearing women's clothes?" And I was like, "It's a free country." And then by the time I came back to have an actual conversation with him, when I was finished with my friend, he was gone. But it's just one of those things, like, people would get overly offended about it and they call Christians bigots or something like that. To me, it's just like, okay, I probably look like a guy. It's not a big deal. It's just one of those things, you just got to learn to live and let live. I don't go around Christians and demand that they not be Christians. It's like, do what you want. It's a free country.
I think one of the best 101 things that I've discovered, and again, me personally, because I have friends who are confused, and I have people I know who are embarrassed or shy or don't want to get called out, and they're like, what is this all about? I always point them to the movie Better Than Chocolate.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a great gateway to understanding a lot of things, not just, the different cultures, but the different people and the different alignments. And yeah, even though it is kind of stereotypical at the end where the skinheads come around, try burning things up and all that, but still you get to know these people as human beings, which you don't get a chance to do in popular society.
Yeah.
You don't get to see the human being that is the person in transition. You don't see the human being who is gay. You don't see the human being that is bi. You see these objects that you're told to either mock or respect or else. And, you're sitting there and you're frozen. Like, my God, what do I do? What do I say? How do I act? And it's really not a fun situation for anyone. But this is why I try to identify as a humanist, because I see these people as human beings, not a label, not a gender, not a expression. You're just another person stuck on this rock spinning around trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Exactly. I love that mentality. It's funny. I forgot what I was going to say again. Never mind. Sorry, Frank, did you have more questions? Sorry, I forgot.
I got plenty of questions.
Oh.
So circling back, as our White House press secretary likes to say, to when we were talking about free speech. Do you think there should be limits on free speech, like when it's used as hate speech or inciting violence, or should free speech just be like anybody can say anything they want, regardless of if it offends somebody? Or what's your take on that?
That's a hard one because everyone calls me out on this. I am for free speech and discourse. If someone wants to, quote unquote, deny the Holocaust, most Holocaust, quote unquote, deniers actually are not denying the Holocaust. But I would say I support free speech. I don't think there's really a need to limit most speech. A lot of people like to use the fatuous and overly praised Justice Wendell Holmes, who in 1917, I think it was Schmeck, something like that, some Jewish Yiddish-speaking guy socialist dude from the East during World War II was handing out leaflets about the sanguinary conflict that we had gotten into because of Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson basically had him arrested and jailed because of the Espionage Act. And in 1919, there was a peer-reviewed article of some kind that was published against the opinion by Wendell Holmes, who said when asking for an actual example when it would be improper to limit speech or define it as an action, gave that of shouting fire in a crowded theater. Despite that, the crowded theater was America, and the ones shouting fire in a really crowded and truly on fire house would have been the Yiddish-speaking socialist that was handing out the leaflets. A lot of people will cite this, saying that you can't shout fire in a crowded theater. There's actually no law against that. I will defend anyone's right to say fire in a crowded theater. If people trample over one another and people end up in the hospital or killed, that's on them. That's on the person who did that. It's not on the person for saying that. If I shout fire while in school. Most schools will line you up, and then you'll walk out. I always had to have my hands behind my back. So I don't see why people, if you hear someone's like, there's a gun or there's fire in the theater, look around. If you don't see fire or you don't smell fire, or if you do, then just get up calmly and walk out. Like, you have to remain calm in these situations. They're not denying the Holocaust. Yes. Most people that I've argued with and talked to and interviewed, I can't remember his name. He was a British historian, David Irving, who was jailed in Austria, probably still is, for nothing more than the potential of uttering an unwelcome thought, which was that the 6 million Jews did not die in the Holocaust. He wasn't denying that the Holocaust didn't happen. He was just saying that the numbers were basically skewed. There are some questionable things, and he was asking questions. He was being skeptical about it. People don't think that, there's no room to be skeptical on the Holocaust. It happened. It's kind of like Christopher Hitchens once asked, like, in a speech on free speech in the University of Toronto in 2006, he made a statement saying, like, how do you know what you know to be true, except that you've been told it's true? How do you prove to a flat earther that the Earth is spherical and rotates around the sun, which rotates around the cosmos, which rotates around other things? How do you prove that? Well, you use photo evidence from satellites from NASA, but how do you know that wasn't fake? So there's there's that too. I think that most free speech, most speech should be free to be used. I don't believe in hate speech. If we only have free speech protecting good speech, like apple pie is good, that's not controversial. That's fine to say. If we ban speech because it's controversial, we'll be making a rod for our own back, in potentia, making it harder for other people who support this notion to continue doing their own thing.
Now, to build on that, the left, or at least we often associate with the left, the people trying to censor free speech by, like, say, a speaker who's somewhat controversial goes to a college campus. Rather than allow that speaker to talk, they will protest to the point where the campus is like, we can't have that person here. Or at the very least, you have to pay extra for the security to have that person here, which makes the whole thing not happen. I think something like that actually happened in Portland, if memory serves.
Yep, a few times.
There was a.
Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say, I remember there was not only that, there's a lot of arrests and there was some vandalism too.
What's that British guy's name? The very flamboyant one, the gay one who likes black dudes. Yeah. He's one of them. Him and a couple others were up there doing that. Yeah, a couple years ago.
I think it was at Free Speech at Melbury. Yeah, I think it was Douglas Murray, not Douglas Murray, Charles Murray, who wrote The Bell Curve. I think it was him, but people would get up, flash their backs to him, and they would deplatform him because he's being a racist. When I hear Charles Murray talking about The Bell Curve and the differences between the races, I'm more than open to wanting to hear that, because how do you know that he's incorrect? People want to say, well, black people, white people, Asians, we're all equal. We're not all equal. Black people are generally better at athletics than white people, it seems. Black people score lower on IQ tests on average, but that doesn't make them inherently worse. But there are differences physiologically and neurologically with certain races, because those races have the reason why we have races is because they were in their own society for so long. People were in Africa for so long. People were in the European continent for so long. People migrated to Asia, and so there were changes. That's why I don't have slanted eyes like an Asian. There were different things that happened. So we're not all equal. We all are different. It doesn't make anyone inherently worse. And if someone like Charles Murray wants to talk about, IQ levels on average between African Americans and Anglo Americans, I would want to hear that. I'd want to hear it, compare it, view the logic of it, look at existing evidence, look at criticisms of his claims, and see where it goes, and make a conclusion myself.
And even beyond measurable things like like IQ and things like that, there are certain physical characteristics that make us different too. Like for example, they say, oh, it's racist to ask if someone's African or Hispanic descent on a medical form. No, it's because there's certain medical conditions that some groups are more predisposed to, or some that only some can get, like certain kinds of cancers. So they know to look for that, because if you say
Sickle
you're
cell
white.
anemia.
Yeah, if they say you're white, you're not going to look for sickle cell anemia. If you're black, they might look for it because you have a higher predisposition towards having it, because that's just basic genetics. That's not even that's a pure basic fact. That's as far as you can get from pretty anything racist. That's just, hey, you're more predisposed to this. So
Well,
check for it.
It's similar to a lot of people were blaming systemic racism and inequalities for Black people, for why Black people were dying more from COVID and why they were becoming infected more. It's like, for example, Portland, or let's use the UK, because Portland and Oregon and the UK are very similar geographically speaking, in the sense that we're always rainy, we're always cloudy, and there's not a lot of vitamin D here. A lot of people are on supplements because of it, and Black people, because their melanin color, the skin color, they absorb vitamin D much less. And vitamin D has been shown to have an effective use against fighting COVID or preventing COVID. So it makes logical sense why someone who's Black is more susceptible to COVID. It's not because of racism. And if someone's wondering what your race is, to determine, like, okay, what your medical issues might be, I don't see an issue with that. What I do have an issue with is filling out job applications, and they're asking, before they get to the races, they ask if you are Hispanic or not Hispanic. And it's like, I don't really think that's relevant as much, like on job applications, except for fitting quotas. There was actually
that's the thing. There's mandates for that sort of thing.
Yeah, there was actually a tweet. I made an article for Area Magazine. Let me pull it up real quick.
And you can share your screen. Just make sure you have anything you don't want shared not on your screen when you do that.
Yeah, don't worry. I don't have any porn pulled up at the moment.
No porn? Well, I'm disappointed in you.
You say
would
no
you
porn?
like some?
Wait,
if you have no porn, I mean, would you like some?
Oh, no, I'm good.
I mean, we share around here. We share and share. Like, nobody should go without porn.
No
So
porn.
here's my article I wrote for Area Magazine. In it, there is, I think we embedded the tweet. Yeah, this was from Chloe, and I'm probably butchering this, but Engile. I was surfing Twitter, and I had noticed that she was basically making a series of tweets about, how you could be more diverse in the Huffington Post business. And I basically wrote this article about how we as minorities, like, she was like, we need more non-binary and trans people. I actually find that grotesque. I don't want people hiring me because I'm trans, or because I'm white or Black or Asian or gay or trans or bisexual or not gender nonconforming. Like, I just want to be hired for my skill set. And I had made that post, and I think it was originally going to go to Huffington Post as a self-criticism of them. They didn't like it. They didn't accept it. They thought it was wrong for a trans person to say, don't use me as your shield or sword. But yeah, it was, there's a stipulation that people try to fit for a lot of things, trying to bring in like trans people, non-binary people, queer people, people of color. And it's like, that just seems wrong. Like, you're not going to have perfect representation. There doesn't need to be like 50% women, 50% men, 12% Black.
Well, some people would argue that without the equal opportunity laws that were implemented, Black people would have never been able to reach the same feats of employment that they currently have.
Well, that's like saying that's kind of I would say that's.
I'm not saying that's my argument. I'm just saying
I know. I'm saying it's kind of a non sequitur, because it's similar to. I would say it's very similar or synonymous with people saying like there's a pay wage gap between men and women. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, if you personally are being paid less than a male for the same job, same criteria, everything. First of all, how do you even know that they have the same everything?
Women tend to go for jobs like nursing and like specific jobs that tend to pay less than like a doctor versus a nurse, right? Just a shitty example off the top of my head, right?
Yeah, but it's like it's been illegal since I think 1965 to be paid differently because of your sex. So if
Right.
like Obama's saying like, yeah, women make 79 cents to the dollar males make, that's not true. That's based off like if you just take, it's like just taking the general, you're not taking in any factors, no variables.
There's a lot of
And
factors they're taking into. I mean, one example is different fields you go into. Men tend to go into high risk fields like oil, which pays pretty well, and women also tend to leave the workforce early to have kids, whereas men don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have 20 years of zero earnings versus even if you made $40,000 every year before that, and the man still makes only 20,000, but he still has those 20 years of earnings, that's going to skew it in his perspective. Even though he may make less, he's still overall making more because he's not taking that big zero.
Exactly. So I would say to that comment, Frank, that it's like the gender pay gap. It's been illegal. If you know you're being paid less or you're being treated differently, take it to court or get a different job. Like, I don't know why you'd want. It's like, why would you want to work with someone who's anti-trans? It doesn't make any sense.
No, we've had as far as the pay gap goes, we've actually had a woman in our industry write a book called Women in Tech. Her name is Tara Wheeler. She's married to Brian Rhea, who's professionally known as Deviant Olam. In her book, she is all gung-ho about equality for women and stuff. But shortly after her book was published, she was herself accused of treating women employees less than humanly, and she was essentially accused of being a dick to her women employees, and like there was even a lawsuit against her because of it, and shit like that happens. It's like you can be like all gung-ho and even write a freaking book about the need for women in technology, and then when you have a woman working under you, treat her like complete and utter shit.
What were these women doing? Sorry, that's victim blaming. It's kind of like, actually, I'll get into rape. Since we were talking about rape accusations earlier, I've actually been called a rape apologist because I'll ask things like, well, what were they wearing? What did they say? These are actual variables that do have an impact on the situation. So if someone's like saying like, oh yeah, she wrote a book about gender equality, but she's sitting there dehumanizing women. Was she doing it because they're women? Or is it just happenstance?
Or was she harder on them because they were women, right? Because
one of the examples I love to bring out, I love to bring this one out and show this because I've actually seen this happen before, is you'll see a person, usually a woman, let's say a woman who sits there and she will rail against things like blonde jokes and dehumanizing women and things that you say that are just hurtful and mean and cutting, and they keep women down. And, they're right. They're right. These things happen. But then you go outside and that woman walks outside the front door of the conference and she sees a giant pickup truck drive by and she goes, must be a swell penis.
Yeah.
And you're like, how can I take you seriously anymore after that? How can you take a pundit seriously after you've seen them do that?
Yeah. It's kind of like implicit bias. I think I talk about it in my book a little bit. People say like everyone has a bias. There's implicit bias. It's everyone's a little bit racist. Well, if everyone's a little racist, why are you so gung-ho on trying to get us to stop being racist? Is like, can you not be not racist? And it's like, because I've argued like, well, I will say like, well, I know how to not be biased because I'm a journalist, and that's literally my job is to write stuff without being biased. Oh, you can't because everyone's biased. Everyone has implicit bias. Okay, can I be racist? No, you can't be racist. But you just said I have a bias, and it basically can't change. So which is it?
Right. That's the thing. The reason why you can't do that is, like I was saying earlier, there's no road to redemption. But really, there's no money. There's no popularity. There's no anything in teaching people how not to be a racist in the normal sense. Now, going to a company and say, for $50,000, I'll give a lecture to your employees, and you can check off a checkbox and say that you've been educated on how not to be racist. But the thing is, you don't get attention by saying this person is not a racist. You will never see somebody go around saying, you see that man over there? He did the right thing. You know what you'll hear? You'll hear a man saying, hey, wait a minute, I did the right thing. And then the response will be, well, what do you want, a cookie?
Yeah.
You want an award for doing what you should have been doing all along? And people wonder why. People wonder why it's so hard to make change in this world. You take your average male person who's raised on grandpa's Playboys in the garage and street knowledge and the shitty education that we get. And he's telling blonde jokes and listening to rap music about slap the hoe, fuck the hoe, right? And then you stop this person and you say, hey, this is wrong and here's why. And that person says, holy shit, I've been doing all this wrong stuff. I'm going to stop doing wrong stuff. Now, what happens at that point? What happens is he's instantly alienated 80% of his male friends, because any of his male friends will hear him talking like that and saying, hey, that's wrong. They're like, what are you, a social justice warrior? Are you suddenly Superman standing up for the dykes? What are you? They hate you, you know. And then, so the person has a choice. They can continue to do the right thing, and they continue to do the right thing. And then what happens? The people he's supporting come back at him and say, oh, yeah, well, you know, all men are rapists anyway. You're just, you know, waiting for the right trigger. Or you're a white hetero male, therefore you believe in slavery and you believe in subjugating women. And you're like, no, wait a minute. I am not. I've done that in the past, and I'm guilty of this stuff, but I've learned. And I've progressed, and I don't do this anymore. Oh, well, what do you want, a cookie? Oh, look, it's the great white hope over here trying to virtue signal to us so that we like him. You want to date, you incel? And so then he stops and says, fuck this noise, goes back to the 80% of his male friends and says, you know what, those bitches were full of shit. And they say, you know what, they were. Congratulations. Welcome back to the fold. Now, let me tell you a story. The other night, this woman was sucking my dick, and then what you have is, you've created an arena where people do the right thing and are punished for it. Therefore, they go back to doing the wrong thing, because the people doing the wrong thing are more accepting of people doing the wrong thing than people doing the right thing are accepting of people who do the right thing and change.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem, kind of going back to what you said and also what you said, Autumn, is that people tend to fire from the hip. And they're doing that. They're making a snap judgment based upon one small thing without taking the bigger picture into effect. And then all of a sudden now everyone's just making snap judgments, and instead of getting the big picture, they're just firing off based upon outrage. It's like it's feeding into the same machine. You're cycling the same fumes back in the machine to run it again, making it worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
You know, to use your example about, you know, wearing clothes and asking for rape. Well, no, I do a lot of self-defense work, and I can tell you, I can look at 10 women and say which one I'll pick as a predator, because I'll look at how you're carrying yourself, what you're wearing, is your hair tied back, you know, do I see invisible weapons or any sign, are you paying attention, shit like that. And I'll point that out, and they'll go, oh, because if you're wearing, you know, a short skirt, no underwear, well, you're an easier target because there's less resistance there.
Exactly.
You know, if you're going out staggered drunk and on your phone screaming to the neighborhood about how you're white girl wasted, I'm gonna pick your ass because you're not paying attention and you're inebriated. Versus if you're sober and you got your head up and looking around, I am not coming near you because you're gonna see me coming.
Exactly.
And this is another great double standard, because if you, as a parent or a person, right, you take a male child, a boy, maybe he's 10, maybe he's 18, who cares, right? And you say to them, okay, now look, put your wallet in your front pocket. Don't flaunt your money. Don't wear a gold chain around your neck. If you're going to go out and drink with your friends, put a 20 in your shoe. So in case you lose your money, you lose your wallet, you get ripped off, you can get a cab home. If you're taking the bus, you know, be careful for this, look out for this. Now, look at this picture. This guy's carrying a knife. This is what it looks like. This guy's carrying a gun. This is what it looks like. This is a person who acts in a predatory manner. Look out for them. And you're called a good parent, a good citizen, a wonderful human being. Now, you turn around and say the same things to a woman. All of a sudden, you're a rape apologist. You're a victim blamer, and you hate women. And you are trying to make excuses for people who rape. And they say, why don't you just teach men not to rape? Well, got to tell you something. The majority of the men, you don't have to teach them not to rape because they're not rapists. Exactly. They're not criminals. A rapist criminal is not going to listen to you say, now, that's wrong. It's like, you're goddamn right it's wrong, and that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And so why is it we punish the people who try to offer? You're not going to eliminate rape. You're not going to eliminate it. It's done. You can't do it. We still have rape. Rape is still a problem. No number of cops no number of calling out and social justice is going to take that away.
I'm
where
a fan
is
of
the
those,
error?
I'm a
Where's
fan
the error in
Africa of the
teaching
rape
people
condoms.
self-defense?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll just be the last sentence out. Then I want you to repeat that. I just wanted to say, where is the error in teaching women, girls, to defense and awareness, and these are what people are looking for. So now, I'm sorry, you were saying?
I was saying I'm a big fan of how in South Africa, or regular Africa rather, that they have invented this thing called the rape condom because women were getting raped so often.
Oh, that's a hoax.
That's not a hoax. I've read like 3. One of them was on National Geographic. All right. Let's do research because you're saying that's a hoax. Maybe it is a hoax.
I've seen that for many years. It's a hoax. Unfortunately, it's a great idea, but unfortunately, it's a hoax. That's the thing is you teach self-defense and that's personal responsibility. That's kind of the whole thing is you teach personal responsibility. You stand up on your own 2 feet. You don't get judged based upon who you are or how you identify or shit like that. You get judged based upon how you are, on how you are and who you are, not what you are.
So I have an article going back to 2010 talking about the rape condom just to prove my point, but maybe it was a hoax.
South African doctor invents female condom with teeth to fight rape. This was in 2010, June 21st, CNN.
I have one from CBS News, June 21st, 2010, 4:35 p.m.
Yep, same day.
I have another one from Snopes about Rape-X, the prototype anti-condom. Claim a photograph will show an anti-rape device known as Rape-X, a female condom. It's a mixture. Let's see why.
It's because it's a prototype and it's never actually been out there.
Is that why?
That's why. Yeah, it's a thing, but it's no more than a prototype. So actually, I just looked that up myself.
Gotcha. Anyway,
I actually got into this argument with someone. There was this person allegedly had his arm broken. I think it was in Toronto.
Ooh, I remember this.
Yeah, this guy is known for being a shit poster and a troll. Apparently, he said something about you're not supposed to, transition children and give them puberty blockers, and someone allegedly broke his arm.
It wasn't allegedly. There was like a group of 7 guys who attacked him outside the conference center.
But we don't know. When I say allegedly, I mean like we don't know the full context of what happened, like what he said, what was done.
We don't know exactly what happened. We do know he ended up with a broken arm.
Yeah,
there's video of him like being beaten with traffic cones.
Yeah, and someone was like, "Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this. Good on the people." I was like, "That's kind of gross. You're basically advocating for violence." And this admin came into this chat and they were saying like, "Oh, they didn't advocate for violence by saying it was okay, but you insulted them by saying that they're gross." I'm like, "Okay, but they literally advocate for violence." And they're like, "By the way, you're now arguing with an admin, which is also against the rules." And I'm like, "What?" And they were like, "Well, you broke the terms of service," and I was like, "Well, he broke the terms of service by advocating for violence. Facebook's terms of service is against the rules on your group page." And so you see this with a lot of people that as long as it's like, if like Richard Spencer, it's fine to punch them because they're advocating for genocide. So they think, even though Richard Spencer has only advocated for race segregated societies, he's never advocated for genocide. Or people say that they're a Nazi. People assume that they want to automatically genocide Jews.
It reminds me what happened with you in the Facebook chat of like a parent telling a kid that they're not allowed to talk back. It's like that kind of scenario. It's like, I'm drunk on power. It's like, I don't want to debate you. You can't talk back to me. If you do, you're gone. It's like, that's not civil discourse. And that's one of the things I think is wrong with like social media is people get power hungry, whether they be a Reddit mod or a Facebook moderator. And like you get these people on power trips just closing off free speech.
Yeah, and it's just like, someone says something you don't like, just grow a thicker skin. I used to be called a girl, feminine names. I've been called a faggot, a queer, a homo. I've been called everything in the book for a very frail. Like when I was in middle school, I was like 60 pounds. I was very short. I was very thin. High school, I was about 90 pounds. I just learned to just deal with it. And someone said, "Yeah, you're gay." I'd be like, "Okay, why is that a bad thing? Like, why me?" And they stopped picking on me after that. And it's just like, someone calls you like, "Hey, tranny, what's going on?" Just ignore it. There was this Don't Shoot PDX, and then PDX Resistance or Portland Resistance. Were led by a guy named Gregory McKelvey, who is known for leading all the protests in Portland since Trump's
Is
entry.
that the Rose City Antifa guy?
He's not with Antifa, but he does consider himself anti-fascist. He's openly advocated for violence, but he denies it. I have photo evidence of it. I think I sent you a chapter, Frank, with the actual evidence of him endorsing
You
the
did.
violence.
I remember.
But
if you want, you can share that chapter, or at least the screenshots if you want to. You don't have to, though.
Yeah, no, I want to make sure it looks good before. I just kind of threw the photos on the bottom.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah.
I think we were touching on how this particular gentleman who's associated with it, with being anti-fascist but not a member of Antifa, has how do I verbalize this? You know what? I'm just gonna drop it.
It boils down to people being hypocrites.
Right.
Yeah.
He's essentially a hypocrite, is what you were.
He very much is a hypocrite.
Hypocrisy and also the shifting definitions. You know, they say, "Oh, punch a Nazi." Well, how do you define Nazi? Because they're defining it very broadly. They're defining it more than what Nazi used to be. You know, they're saying they're anti-fascist. Oh, fascism is these things, and it's like, no, it's not.
Tactics to fight fascism.
You know what's funny is that they'll say fascism is wrong because Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. But then I'll be like, okay, what about communism? Oh, well, real communism hasn't been implemented. That's why the Soviet Union fell. It wasn't real communism. It wasn't real socialism. And then I would reply, well, you haven't seen real fascism. Have you read Benito Mussolini's? I would inquire or request everyone watching this to Google the Fascist Manifesto on Wikipedia and then read it. It is something that you would see Antifa endorsing because it's very progressive for what you hear nowadays. And I actually helped my ex troll Black Lives Matter by making a Black Lives Matter manifesto that was basically the Fascist Manifesto ripped off, and Snopes covered it.
It reminds me of something somebody else did. That was Peter
Boghossian,
James Lindsay, and Helen Puckrose with some academic journal articles.
Well, there's even more classics than that. Someone took Hitler's Mein Kampf and replaced the word Jew with men. And they basically said it's a feminist manifesto. People are like, "Oh, it's so great!" It's like,
funny you should mention that, Darren, because
that's the grievance studies by Dr. Peter Boghossian, Dr. James Lindsay, and Helen Pluckrose, who's now the editor-in-chief for the Area magazine. I interviewed them. The funny thing is, before the Wall Street Journal published that those three were using the pseudonym Helen something to write these fatuous papers, I actually encountered Peter on Twitter. And I was like, "Is this you?" And he was like, "Oh no, that's not me." And then when I interviewed him, he was like, "Yeah, you were the first one to find us out, but we didn't want to give it out the information out just yet." But yeah, they would talk about like dog rape on in Portland and how men should be leashed, or if you don't want to be transphobic or homophobic, stick something up your butt. All these bullshit things. The Mein Kampf, my struggle from Adolf Hitler, was also put into there. It was really funny, and I would recommend anyone looking into it to kind of just look at the grievance studies. It's totally worth it. You can contact me if you can find my contact. I don't know if Frank can send that, but I can actually send the reports that Peter sent me of all the stuff and the reviews, the glowing reviews people were giving these fake peer review papers. Like, this is amazing. This is just stupendous.
What email address should I put up in the little thingy here?
Just first.lastname@gmail.com.
I spelled it right.
AutumnBernard@gmail.com. I'm just kidding, Berend. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you go there, I can send you the information if you're curious about it. The reviews are pretty funny to read, considering it's all bullshit. They were talking about how there's not a lot of rigor within the gender studies, women's studies, and all Black studies peer review papers. I would say that's probably with everything, as long as it sounds right, because they didn't actually do any research. They just bullshitted it, and it was all accepted. I think 7 or 4 of them got accepted out of all of them.
The fact that many got accepted, though, is pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really is.
Wasn't it like the top feminist journal at the time, too?
Yep. It was based off of the feminist guy. Let me Google it. I want to make sure I'm saying this word right. I almost said gynecologist. Feminist. What was it? Glaciarism? Glaciology. Feminist glaciology is what was their motivation for doing the fake studies, the fake peer review studies.
Right. So the next question I have for you, Autumn, your book is called The Angry Tranny, but you don't seem so angry. You actually seem pretty personable and likable, maybe dateable. So my question is, why do you call it The Angry Tranny? Is it about being angry about the lack of civil discourse that people have, or why would you call it that?
It's actually I think a better question is, why did my column get started? And why was that called The Angry Tranny? And to answer
let's retcon that and add that in.
Yeah. Well, I already did that for you. But yeah, I would say that the reason why it's called The Angry Tranny is because I am kind of irate about how things are going within my community. I'm not writing this book because I want to, rather because I feel obligated to write it. I am a bit of a contrarian, so I like to kind of push the envelope on things. Frank, you know me, so you probably know I don't have really a filter on controversial ideas. Like if there's something like George Floyd, I made a post recently on Facebook about George Floyd and explained why I don't think Chauvin's racist or that he was targeting Floyd because he was black. One of the primary evidences I cite is that George Floyd and his SUV in the passenger side was another black dude. And the 2 officers that arrived on the scene, I actually can send the body cam footage, or you can find it on YouTube. They didn't arrest or treat horribly that black guy, but they did with Floyd, who was constantly resisting arrest. So I would say it's just kind of like, I don't know. I guess the surmise is that I feel a bit angry and irate about how things are going within my community, how people are believing things without questioning. If you I hate this statement so much. I'm on a lot of forums trying to get information and researching. And one of the things, if you question non-binaryism or non-binary identities, they'll be like, oh, so now all of a sudden I don't exist. It's like, no one's saying you don't exist, you fucking idiot. Everyone's saying your identity doesn't exist. It has nothing to do with you as a person existing. Though at that point, if you're that dumb, you probably shouldn't exist because of evolution. Oof. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that, but yeah, that's a bit of the Angry Tranny coming out.
And that's kind of the problem. I think a lot of them as well is they're trying to make themselves focused on their identity. They're becoming their identity rather than their identity becoming part of themselves. So I see this in other communities that tends to have more trans and similar non-hetero people. They tend to be very focused on their identity rather than who they are, and their identity is just one facet of many.
Yeah, and if you go around saying like, well, I take pride in being straight or white, then it's all of a sudden, it's like the whole troll project of it's okay to be white. Well, that's racist. Well, what about the sex straight pride parade?
To measure if something is like that, I think if you just change the word to the opposite, like it's okay to be white. If you change that, say it's okay to be black. I mean,
you cannot be okay or take pride. I don't think you should take pride in being black or white. Anyways, it's not something you.
Oh yeah.
You did. You're just born that way. But I would say, yeah.
Well, does that mean you shouldn't take pride in being gay because you were just born that way?
Have you ever been to gay pride?
Here's one thing.
It is sexual deviance.
Have you ever spent any time on a playground as a kid?
Oh yeah.
I have to call a lot of this stuff playground politics, because a lot of what you're seeing is, I have a knife, I have a gun, I have a shield, I have an everything-proof shield, I have a super everything-proof shield. Well, I'm a superhero. Well, I'm from another planet and I'm an alien and gravity doesn't affect me. It's like what I'm seeing when I see these things is a replay of one-upism on a playground, just with greater, with more money on the table.
Yeah.
I see people like, well, I'm gay. Well, I'm gay plus. Well, I'm actually bi with a leaning towards gay. And it's like, none of you are really anything that you're not already are. Like, I worked in a very, very sensitive place once, and damn near got my butt handed to me politically, because a person who was openly gay, everyone knew it. There were, and unfortunately, I don't want to say this is a stereotype, but he was a perfect example of the flamboyant gay male.
Yeah.
And he made sure everyone knew, right? There was no question. And we were on friendly terms. I was actually friends with him, and I was looking for a new apartment. And he said, well, have you found a new apartment yet? And I said, I've looked at a few places, but they were just all way too G for me. And what I meant by that was they were very ghetto. They were fall apart houses, tiny places, miskept. They were,
Like
holes in
project
the wall,
homes.
burn mix in the right. And he said, "Oh, did you mean to say they were gay? Using gay as a pejorative is not very nice to people like me, because I happen to be gay." And my mouth took over before my brain did. And I said, you're not gay. You're just heterosexually challenged. And I said that, and I'm like, I am going to get roasted over the goddamn fire for this one.
Did you?
And he came over, and he sat down on the desk and put both of his arms around my neck and said, "That was an insult worthy of a gay man." And he bopped his head back and forth while he said it. And I was like, oh, thank God. I'm off the hook.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
I've gotten in trouble for just saying what I'm thinking quite a bit in my life. I mean, I remember a long time ago, I was working at a pet store back when I was a teenager, and I was friends with my coworkers, or so I thought. And one day, one of them was wearing like a really tight-fitting pair of pants, and she comes up to me and goes, "Did these pants make my butt look fat?" And I was trying to be funny and joke around with her because I thought we had that kind of dynamic. And I said, "No, your butt makes your butt look fat." I thought it was funny. I got fired for that. It's like, you have to really be careful what you say.
One time, someone asked me what I thought about her shoes, and I said, the last time I saw a pair of shoes like that, they were resting on my shoulders. But I mean, they were these like huge stiletto heels that you would only see in either a strip club or on the internet, and I mean, really, they were over the top. And so I thought that was pretty funny, and well, she did not.
Yeah,
and
no,
I got an earful.
Everything is, I don't know, like people talk about like some things are just not funny, like rape. Have you ever seen Elmer Fudd getting raped by Porky the Pig? You don't think that's funny? Like, I think it's kind of funny. I think if like rape can be funny if you do it right. I think racial things can be funny. Like Dave Chappelle did Sticks and Stones recently, and people were calling him transphobic for talking about the alphabet soup. I laughed really hard at the tranny jokes. I was actually going to write it like, please don't feel bad about my people. They're just a bunch of idiots.
One of the jokes I used to hear, I mean, I've cataloged and I did a lot of research in verbal abuse because I really enjoy it. I've got dictionaries of verbal abuse, papers on it. And I remember the one, it was like, did you see the recent study that said 4 out of 5 people have no problem with gang rape?
No, I'm Googling that right now though. What was it?
No, it's not, it's a joke. It's not serious.
Oh.
4 out of 5 people surveyed have no problem with gang rape.
Oh.
It's one of those you have to stop for a minute and go, oh, wow, that's really horrible.
Yeah.
That's absurdity. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned like the use of gay. Gay means happy. And then it's all of a sudden they take the word and they mean it to mean homosexual faggots. Or excuse me, homosexuals.
But the thing is, they do tend to be happy though.
Yeah, but you say like, oh, well, man, Josh, your shoes are gay. They'll be like, well, that's offensive. What's wrong with being gay? Like I went on a YouTube comment to troll people. It was this Taxi Driver song from Yakuza 0. And someone was making a comment about like, this song plays when your girlfriend is in your friend's bed in Minecraft. And I'm like, Minecraft is gay. Everyone went around to my channel on YouTube and started downvoting shit and being like, Minecraft is not gay. What's wrong with being gay? I'm like, nothing's wrong with being gay, but the game's gay. And it's like the word, like it used to mean happy, jovial, and all that stuff. Then it means homosexual, but it can't mean something else. It can't mean dumb, dull, or boring. It can't mean anything else. It has to mean they changed it. They took the word to mean homosexuals. And if you try to use it for any other way, it's homophobic. And it's like, that's not homophobic. I would say it's more
Probably
homophobic.
the same with the word retarded, right?
Riddle me this. When I was in grade school, I was called a faggot because I like to play with computers instead of racing cars.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're reading a book and playing with a computer? You're a fag.
I was
a
a
fag
sports
doesn't
fan,
play
and
with
they called
cars.
me a new fag. I mean, what the hell was that?
Yeah,
And I'm like, I'm just trying to figure that out because, how does dorking around with electronics make you homosexual? I'm not really sure. I mean, I understand it in a what's his name? The guy that just put on the money over in England. The really brilliant tech guy who was gay, and they made him go through chemical castration.
Alan Turing.
Right, and in an Alan Turing kind of way, I can understand, but it's just weird how some people think that way, and a lot of times that's where people develop an early dislike of those words because their social group, which again, 5-year-old, 8-year-olds, but still, that's where they first get a negative connotation into the word gay, and then just carry it forward with them into the rest of their life, and it becomes synonymous with anything you don't like. Yep. In the same way, a lot of SJWs are like, anything I don't like is Hitler, and it's just like, we're.
And they use the word literally incorrectly to like, Trump is literally Hitler. If he's literally Hitler, that guy would be over 100 years old. He's not literally Hitler. I think you mean figuratively. You literally
and nothing he did.
Literally has come to mean figuratively, which is ironic.
As a writer, it bothers me. Like, if you want to trigger me, just write me in horrible English, and I will be triggered. That's the best way to trigger me. Like, I don't get offended by people calling me a tranny or any of that. Or even saying, you could use my dead name, and while I would be a little like off-put by it, I wouldn't care as much. But if someone were to do the other thing, I would like misspelling words or using text chat, I would be more offended by that than someone calling me a guy.
I had the other thing is this week where I was just using text to speech and speech to text, vice versa, on my phone as I was doing stuff and talking to this girl that I think is amazing, and she took issue with it. She was like, "Your grammar sucks, man," and I was like,
"Never work on your grammar."
The funny thing is too, you can take the person saying, "Are you a tranny?" And the thing is, that can be very situational. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be a little stereotypical here, but let's be realistic. A dyed-in-the-wool redneck wearing his rebel flag T-shirt and his Dukes of Hazzard ball cap, "Are you a tranny?" is different than the guy in the adult bookstore 2 seats over from you looking over and go, "Are you a tranny?"
Yeah, I actually went to Texas. Please don't laugh at this, but the lake where my grandparents used to live was called Lake Kickapoo in Texas. It's just about 30 minutes or less south of Wichita Falls, which is 2 hours north of Dallas. And the area was flooded, and this guy in his truck came up, and me and my ex were joking about what he was going to say to his friends, because this is a very redneck area, but it's where I grew up. And we were joking like he was going to go to his friends and be like, "You're not going to believe this, Jeb, but I saw one of them transgender folks today." And to me, like, that kind of stuff makes me laugh. Like, if someone were to be like, "Are you a transgender?" I'd be like, am I transgender? Yes, I'm not a transgender. I guess grammatically I would be, but it's just like people's grammar really gets on me more than people calling my gender out. And I think it's because like when we're talking about things, grammar, like if you're not being verbal and you're using text, proper grammar makes it easier to comprehend the point you're trying to make. And the lazier you are with your writing, the worse off your point's going to be. And then, if someone doesn't get it, they're like, "Well, that's on you. That's your fault." Or, "I'm not doing your homework for you." It's like, you're trying to make a point.
Oh, I hate when people say that. That drives me insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
That reminds me of another story too. Going back to the verbal abuse thing, there's an old saw about a guy who's driving through. What was it? The gay man who's driving across country to get to San Francisco. Stereotype.
Yeah.
Car breaks down in a redneck town, and they get it to the mechanic, and he says to the mechanic, "It's like, well, what's wrong with my car?" And he says, "Well, looks like you blew a tranny." And the guy says, "You leave my personal life out of it and just tell me what's wrong with the fucking car." And That was
a
actually
great joke. I
echoed.
gotta remember that one.
And it was echoed in the 80s in the Kip Odada song Wet Dream, where everything was about fish. And he said, I asked the guy who was a flounder, I said, what's wrong with my car? He says, looks like you blew his seal. And he says, just fix the damn car and leave my personal life out of it. There are hundreds of variations on that. But yeah, blowing the tranny in your car is like, oh, that's something Eddie Murphy did. Ha 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 ha, and there are all kinds of ways.
That British actor from that movie everybody likes.
You mean Patrick Stewart in the BBC TV show where he gets in the car with the tranny?
Stephen Fry. Is it Stephen Fry, the guy with the broken nose who's also gay?
No, it was the guy. I'll tell you. Hugh Grant, I think it was.
I was going to say that one atheist comedian who was in Night at the Museum. He's always like kind of a dick. I can't remember his name.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, but that's not who you're talking about.
No.
Okay.
Although I could see him doing something like that.
Having hung out in a lot of the interesting clubs in New York City, I got to see a lot of both sides of the abuse. Mm-hmm. Where you'd be walking down the street with a bunch of goths, and somebody will yell, "Hey, Morticia, Halloween isn't for 6 months." And I would yell back, "Yeah, but you know what? Every day is a day to be an asshole, apparently." Yeah. And the woman I was with, who he was yelling at, she just broke out laughing. But at the same time, I'll be in the club, setting up my DJ kit, and the person in charge of the stage and all would just go up there and start singing songs from Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
And the owner of the club would walk by and go, oh, "You fags," and they'd walk away. And everybody would break out laughing.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, at least when I get a pound of bologna at the deli, I get it sliced. And they would just go back and forth, and it was always just funny as hell. But then you would see the same thing in a derogatory way the minute you stepped out of that environment.
Yeah. It reminds me of this, what I was trying to say earlier, but I had forgotten. The PDX Resistance, led by Gregory McKelvey. They had posted, I actually put it in my book, I think. I don't know. There's a ton of shit I found on my old phone. I was going to use to call out Gregory McKelvey. But his organization said there was, what are they called? They're like some kind of skinhead group. Hammer.
Oh, Sharps?
Skinheads. Portland. No. Hammer Skin Nation. I think that's it. I think it's Hammer Skin is what they are. And they were like on their Twitter, like, yeah, we just got reports that be careful because there's a bunch of racist bigots from the Hammerskins across the street from this queer bar using racial epithets and all this kind of stuff and being just totally racist. I called the bar, didn't get an answer. The next day I was heading to the newsroom and I called them again. I was like, yeah, I just want to get an idea of what happened. And they're like, oh yeah, there's just a group of white guys walking across the street. I was like, that's it? And they're like, yeah, that's basically it. There was no conflict. And I was like, so basically you're saying that this activist organization people take seriously lied or manipulated the situation. I don't know if they lied. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it's one of those situations like, an activist Twitter or a city Antifa, PDX Resistance, whichever it is, they can say what they want about claims, like calling Andy Ngo a white supremacist apologist or whatever. There's lots of reasons to be skeptical. I don't trust anything activists say now, just because after that incident, I was just like, there's no point in believing half of the shit that they're doing to push a narrative.
You can't argue with that. That's gospel right there.
Well,
yeah.
I like rationalism.
Yeah, but who's rational?
Me? Just kidding.
It's hard to find rational people. I've said this before. Being on this on this cast, it's like you find this is like the easiest place to find rational people. But man, once this podcast is over and you go outside into the real world, you feel like you just came out of a bad Twilight Zone episode.
It's true. Go ahead.
It's like I come in here and I talk about being in a wheelchair and being in a wheelchair for 5 years. And, it's like, I decked it out with Raspberry Pis and I wired it up for this and I can de-auth everything in a 10-foot radius. And I go outside, to DEF CON and someone says to me, you should just kill yourself for the betterment of the scene. You know, and I'm just like, oh, and then you try to get on a bus and you can't get on the bus, and they're like, you know, you're just a drain on the economy. You should just, you know, give up and stay home. And you know, I'm like, yeah, and your dad should have used a condom. And you know, what's your point?
They should have had legal abortions back when your mom was pregnant, because then we wouldn't have to deal with you.
You know, I could have been your dad, but the dog beat me over the fence.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I guess I'm kind of sheltered and fortunate that I just don't hang out with people that are that awful. You know,
It's not. I don't hang out with people that are that awful. People are out there are that awful. I go out the front door of my apartment, and there are people that are that awful in 10 feet in any direction.
But I bet
Again, I live in Vegas, so you know that that does kind of stand to reason.
So yeah, my neighbor works for the sheriff's department, so he's cool. You know, and he has.
Yeah, I used to live in Manhattan, and you know, man, anything goes in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
speaking of anything goes, so Autumn, you run a website called the Inquirer magazine. You say you question everything without censorship.
Yeah.
Yet I have one question for you.
Uh-oh.
Do you not post your own opinion on that site?
I do. I do post essays. I would say essays or columns. The Inquirer magazine is my own outlet that works as it's scrolling. I was saying like, wow, am I watching the news right now? Yeah, the Inquirer magazine is like the blue collar place. It's like you go to Ariel magazine, you go to the New York Times, you go to Huffington Post, you go to all these places to publish essays and your opinions, and it's very arduous just to get them through. But with the Inquirer magazine, like anyone, instead of wasting your time on Facebook saying like, you know, racists should just stay home or something like that, I don't know. You use that energy to make a decent argument for why racists should not exist, or why racists should exist or something. It's about allowing it easy access for the average person to write essays and arguments and opinions. I have published my own. I try not to do it too much, not to be too cathartic, but I think the last one I did was actually on the minimum wage, and the next one's going to be...
Quick question. Some journals actually like will color a section like yellow if it's opinion.
Yeah,
you
the Guardian does that.
Between what's an opinion piece and what is an actual news piece?
I don't have a news section at the moment. It's mostly an essay place, like Ariel magazine. So we accept argumentation, and essays, or things like my old professor. Some people might be aware of this, but there was a peer review a journal written by Dr. Bruce Gilley from Portland State University. He used to be my political science instructor for a while. We still talk, but he wrote a piece called "The Case for Colonialism," and he was lambasted horribly by people. It's a place like that. So, like, Frank, if you wanted to write about something about tech, I would say, you know, contact me and then just write it, and then I'll edit it, and then using my skills as an editor to make it
not look like a moron.
Well, what differentiates this from like a news site is that it's not for news. We don't claim to be news. It's more an intellectual platform for everyone, rather than just like, well, we only accept certain people, and you know, you got to fit our certain word style, and it's got to be so long, it's got to be, you can't use hyperbole. Instead of that, it's just like, you know, make an argument for whatever case you want, and whether I agree with it or not, and I'll post it up. I had someone post, I think at one point before it was taken down, like why Trump was a sexist. I'm fine with that. I don't agree with that Trump is a sexist, but you know, it's not about whether or not I agree. And I used to be, no, the website went down for a little bit. I forgot to pay it. When I was the opinion editor for the Clackamas Print, I actually was making sure everyone felt comfortable doing their own essays and opinions. And there was someone who wanted to do a piece on, you know, sexism and the Women's March. And I was like, go ahead, do it. But then I was like, everyone on campus is going to agree with that. Someone else wants to write an opinion piece about why the women's movement march was bad. I let them do that instead for space. I actually wanted to originally do like a side-by-side comparison of one argument versus the other. So it's mostly an argumentative website for people of any kind of creed, philosophy, or opinion to basically publish their thoughts.
Is that Inquire magazine with a hyphen?
No, it's just theinquiremagazine.org.
Ah, okay.
All right.
Right,
And
right.
do idiots ever mistake that for the National Enquirer and give a shit about it?
Yeah, I've argued. I'm very argumentative. I'm a contrarian, and I've been on Facebook where people will comment. They will somehow stalk me if they don't like what I say in a group, and they'll be like, "At least I don't work for the Inquirer." I'm like, "The Inquire magazine," and it's also Inquire with an A or an I, as in like asking questions,
Yeah.
not Inquire.
I'm getting a 404 on that.
Oh, here, let me.
Oh, I wonder why. I'm getting
theinquiremagazine.org.
Yeah, it works for me. The Inquire, INQUIRE, magazine.org.
Yeah, that's what. Oh, wait a minute. You know what?
Is there an R on it then?
Oh yeah,
No. It's. I think my pie hole doesn't like it.
That
I
damn.
was like, God damn it! Did I not pay my bill again?
It's time to hit your pie hole on your local network and add an exception, man. It's worth it.
Yeah, basically, I just want people to be able to publish their ideas and be heard.
No, I want to check it out.
I want a conversation to happen. I don't say rationality. Barry, you earlier said you like rational people. I prefer people. I would say, intellectualism. I wouldn't call myself an intellectual. People conflate that as being like a super smart person, but rather an intellectual in the sense that I follow intellectualism, which is the pursuit of logic over emotion and the truth and knowledge and trying to rationalize the world around us. I would say I very much agree with you, actually, Barry, on like what kind of people you want to associate with, because when you have like people who just do knee-jerk reactions all the time, it gets really old when they evoke emotion.
Yeah. But I try to hang with people that are treat me well, and I can treat them well. I mean, it's very rational.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to not have to. I don't interact with a lot of horrible people.
Lucky you.
Yeah, lucky you.
Then again, I stay home 90% of the time.
I was going to say, come to Portland, Oregon, where like 50% of the population is trans, the other population is straight, and then about 25% of the population is homeless, and everyone and their mother is an activist. Everyone has Black Lives Matter signs out there. My neighbor actually had a Trump flag, and then next door they had a Biden flag, and they always talk to each other. And I was like, my God, why can't people be like that more often?
I hate to be the gingerbread house toilet clogger, but I can't get that site.
Well, fix your man.
I'm doing I did a DNS check from MX Toolbox, and it's coming back with a record not found.
Do an NS lookup to 8888.
I posted in the private chat of the thing.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at it right here, and I'm using nst.org through MX Toolbox, and I'm getting a not found.
Yeah, it should be HTTPS semicolon / the Inquire INQUIRER magazine.org.
Okay.
THEZ.
It looks like you have an SSL certificate here. Unknown issuer on your SSL or something.
Oh, I like Frank said, I'm not a very computer whiz person. I do build websites from time to time, but I'm not like, I can do some HTML and CSS and some JavaScript, but I don't know much. I know more about hardware than I do software.
Okay. Well,
So I think their cert is valid. It doesn't expire until 6/2/21, and it was issued by tls.automatic.com.
it's a newly observed domain. That my.
Oh, that's because she had to re-register her domain.
It used to be theinquiremagazine.com, and then someone
domain squatters.
Yeah, domain squatters stole it, and then I was like, okay, I'll just go with .org. Simple enough.
How can you steal it unless you renew your domain? I mean,
she forgot to renew her domain, and
I didn't renew it for like a year or two, and then someone took it, which I don't know why, because it's like, who's going to name themselves the Inquirer magazine?
Domain squatters. I mean, she's not perfect.
Yeah.
She forgot to renew her.
Automated domain squatting has been a horrible thing for years.
like I have an idea about doing, since there's really no like transgender clothing stores. I actually want to do like one called the gender store, and it's like it focuses on catering to like mostly trans people and stuff they can use to pass, but non-binary clothes and new fashion that would fit non-binary, because I don't know. I thought it would be a good way to make money off of these people.
Oh, I certainly think it's a good way to make money. But the thing is, to say there aren't any stores out there, my God, there's a lot of them that I know of.
Yeah, but yeah, they're starting to pop up now. But like when it comes to like trans,
No, I'm talking about like back in 2000, when back when I was DJing, clubbing and stuff, and there's always been tons of stores, either online, offline. I mean, there's 3 here in Vegas, although one went under.
For gender non-conforming?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Wow. Oh, this was going to be like an online store, like a gender non-conforming Amazon-esque kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get kitten heels in a men's size 13 at this place. I mean,
oh, well, shit. I need to go to Vegas. What am I doing in Portland?
Well, right now Vegas is screwed because of the pandemic and everything. But you're much better off going to for that sort of thing. You should do Zappos.
I was also
Zappos is a much better place to look for shoes like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually
Zappos has every kind of shoe imaginable. If you want, red, white, and blue Crocs, you can get them. It's just, yeah.
People still wear Crocs? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I wear them because they're the only thing that comes big enough that will accommodate my feet.
Okay, I will not make fun of Crocs then.
No, it's you can make fun of them. I mean, it's what some people think are fancy. I'm wearing my fancy shoes, but the problem is the size of my foot varies from day to day. And Crocs are like the only way to have some kind of shoe that will fit no matter what size my feet are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before transitioning, I prefer Oxfords and cardigans.
Very classy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a good story about that. If you want to hear a funny story about that.
Go ahead.
When I worked in Manhattan, I worked for a very prestigious incubator company. And we were the ones that got little startup companies going. We gave them their IT department and everything. And I used to have to give presentations all the time. Mm-hmm. About, this is your network. This is your network on drugs. Now, this is your network with us. Have a nice day. Give us money. And I was also at night. I was a club DJ at night, and I didn't want to have to go back to Brooklyn from Manhattan, just to change up. So I would bring a bag with all my clothes in it, and I would wear combat boots. And I mean, really nicely polished, because I'm ex-military. I know how to polish boots kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Well, the CEO of the company had a conniption fit because I was wearing combat boots in the office. And he said that it wasn't appropriate and that it didn't give the right image, and I needed to look professional. So I went down to 14th Street to a place called Lee's Mardi Gras, and I got myself a pair of 2-inch heels in black patent leather.
Nice.
And I shined the hell out of those things. And then the next day I went into a presentation wearing them. And just about nobody noticed, but my boss turned like white as a ghost. And the CEO, I think he broke his pencil just looking. He could see it because he was at the head of the table. And I'm walking back and forth doing my presentation, using the whiteboard, shaking hands and all that. And I got told by my boss later that day, he said, Peter said, never fucking do that again, and combat boots are acceptable.
That's great.
It's funny, earlier, you can tell technology spying on people. I hate when people say it's not, because I just got this. Oh, trip to Las Vegas.
Imagine that.
Yeah, or like, what's that word app you use, Frank? WordSense or something?
Oh, I use
it's like Grammarly, but it's purple.
Yeah, I use WordTune. It's very much Grammarly.
Yeah, I installed it, and then I was like, WordTune. And then I took it off because it was getting annoying and fucking up my documents. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing ads on YouTube for for Grammarly alternatives. I'm like, what the fuck? Stop spying on me.
Oh, you want me to do my usual routine I do every week on the show?
As our friend Zach says, Google is the deep state.
Oh yeah, it is. That's Big Brother.
You know,
we lost somebody.
Uh-oh.
He left.
He doesn't love us anymore.
You interrupted him, Frank, and look what happened. But anyways, what other questions do you have?
Sure.
Sorry.
No problem. Did he? I have interrupted him in the past. I think I did that last week, and he left right at that time. And the timing was so that it appeared on the cast that he left because I interrupted him. But he actually did have a phone call that he had to get to, and he kind of did say it, but it wasn't very loud when he said it.
Yeah.
So, but the timing was impeccable. It's like,
Yeah, that's why I was thinking right there. I was like, "Oh, Frank, you fucking did it."
oh no. All right. One more question. Back when you were in college, right? You would write some controversial stuff sometimes. Usually, I think one example was you were calling out another publication for doing what we were talking about, essentially inserting their opinion rather than reporting on the facts. And you had a professor come to you, I think, or an advisor maybe, and they said something along the lines of, Autumn, you can't do that. You can't, if you want to be a journalist, you can't do that. What do you think about that now? Do you think you can do that and still be a journalist?
Of course. The thing we mentioned, I touched on it a little bit, but the thing I'm referring to is actually this. Let me share my screen.
He's back.
I don't know. Is it
Oh,
showing?
you got me! You got me before I could say it. That score 1 point for you.
Yeah.
You cut me off before I could say it, right, Frank?
Did I?
Oh, maybe you didn't, because I was just about to say the same thing I say every week that makes you scream.
What are you going to say?
Okay, Google, donkey porn.
You motherfucker!
Oh no!
What is it? I know it's gonna make me mad, and then you say it, and he's like, "Oh, god damn it!"
He has a Google device in his place, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You
So
need-
this one
you
is
need to change the keyword, Frank. Okay, you can change the keyword.
Yeah,
so
you can
can't
use
do
either
that.
"Hey" company name or just say
You were talking about
"Okay"
how somehow
company name, but either
everything's
one
listening.
will
So
activate it.
you were talking about how everything is listening and why you got your offer to Vegas, and I reminded me I hadn't said it this week yet.
James
so.
Damore.
Yeah, James Moore, he wrote the Google memo. It was about 10 pages long. It was basically there's differences between men and women. Here's what Google's doing to fix the disparity. This is what I think should be done to actually, excuse me.
Why do they call him a tech bro?
Fix-
That seems like an odd way to phrase it. Tech
Yeah,
bro.
let me Google that. I don't know.
Tech bro. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Short Tech Bro has.
You never heard Tech Bro before?
I've heard bro. I never.
Yeah, Tech Bro is what all of us InfoSec people are. That when we all get together and keep minorities down.
Can we call him a
Tech Bros.
Zeke?
I've never heard that one either. So I mean, that doesn't seem rational.
It's not.
Yeah.
None of it's rational.
It's not
You keep
Autumn,
saying
we
that.
had this awesome program that used to be called Bro that you could use to like search for stuff on your network. And the author got so inundated with bullshit about calling his program Bro that he had to rename it to Zeke.
Isn't that like also a replacement for Snort?
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's NIDS.
But
You
as
know,
you
it's
can see
funny
here-
that you could spend your entire life just sitting there looking at the world and going, that's not rational. That's not rational. No, the world is not rational. Period.
I saw your
Well, I know.
Discord.
Yeah, I had to get out of that.
I
was gonna say-
observe.
I do have to get going soon, but to really touch on this, I would say Tech Bro very unprofessional. I can tell you, I'm known for writing bad headlines. Like I'm very like I would have said something like Google memo writer James Moore will speak at PSU. Like it's very boring. I'm very generic. The best headline I've ever written was when I was covering the 2016 election. I actually got my editor-in-chief, Blake Swanson, to put on the front cover, Trump grabs us by pussy, or US by pussy, because it was capitalized. And no one liked that, or people liked it. They actually read the newspaper, but some professors actually didn't like it. But
Oh, wow.
Tech Bro, Inappropriate use. Fired for saying women are biologically unfit to be engineers. Never said that. James Norwell answered questions about his opinions on diversity and presumably why women can't do math. He also never said that. There's nothing about women not being able to do math. And then it begins with the diversity mocking tech bro. Google fired last year for writing a 10-page screen blaming women and their biological inferior brains. That's all opinion. This is an opinion. This is really bad journalism. And what I did is I wrote a column called Ethical Journalism. And I basically said you should support independent, honest, true journalism, not yellow journalism, not like the Willamette Week, which is based here in Portland. And Aaron Mesh, the news editor for the Willamette Week, contacted me on Twitter and offered to have a discussion about it at the Willamette Week office. I went there and he was late, made me wait an extra 10 minutes. Then he took me to the conference room, and then he started explaining the same thing Milo Yiannopoulos said to an Asian American on a college campus, which is, quote, everybody has an opinion. Why bother hiding it? End quote. And I was like, well, that's not what a journalist is. If you call yourself journalism, you need to just why is it so hard to just write the facts? James Moore, who was fired from Google for writing a memo, internal memo criticizing Google's activities for solving diversity issues, will speak at Portland State University. I don't know why that's so difficult. I don't know why you had to put on this opinionated verbiage. But yeah, my advisor for the Clackamas print came to me. She wrote me in a text, actually, and she basically said how we're not supposed to be calling out other journalists or going after other journalists. And I responded I don't really care. I don't regret it. And if we can't call out other journalists, why do we constantly take pleasure in calling out Trump and other people? We should be holding ourselves accountable. If we don't, then people will go on thinking that's real journalism, and yellow journalism will be normalized, and then people won't believe us, and then journalism will die. And journalism originally started in ancient Rome with equivalent of a newspaper they had back then. And the idea that people are bastardizing my profession really irritates me. I actually was going to write a book called The Angry Journalist about that. But yeah, I got caught. Yeah, it could be. If only I was black, I call myself the angry. Well, I probably shouldn't say it because of YouTube.
Oh, no. Well,
yeah.
Get demonetized.
Yeah, the angry N-word.
Hey, I'll say it. I don't give a fuck.
Nigerian?
Yes.
Okay,
That's what we're going for.
That's one.
Naggers. I'm talking about naggers.
Well, I don't think that Adrian's channel is monetized, is it?
Oh, a lot of his videos are, but a lot of them are not, especially the casts, because we always say words that get a keyword banned.
Yeah,
but you can always use a long A,
Yeah, I think we should stay away from the word for now.
Well,
I agree. We should stay away from the word. I think everybody should stay away from the word. But the thing is, by the same token, while we're sitting here dancing around this word, people are saying the same word 25 times in 3 minutes and making millions of dollars off of it as we speak.
Yeah, and it's to me, it's like it's not in my vocabulary, anyways. I don't go around saying
it's not in mine either. But the thing is I have to be careful and I have to tiptoe through the tulips, and yet somebody can pick up a microphone and say it 25 times in a song and make a few $1 million. And if I went down there and said, well, they're not always black. Eminem is not black the last time I checked.
That's racist. If words are okay for one racial group and not another, that's pretty fucking racist. Even though words are okay for everyone, it's not okay at all.
I'm much too polite to use that type of language.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to be reasonably decent to people. All right.
I try to be more creative. I try to explain to people, you're the kind of person that has a personality that can only be measured on the Bristol scale.
Well, I mean,
I think that's a lot more fun than calling somebody some name that's been around for 200 centuries. And if you don't know what that is, look up the Bristol scale on Google, and you'll see why
I'm not familiar with the Bristol scale.
The Bristol scale is the measure of solidity of human excrement.
Oh.
Like whether or not you're dropping a log or you get diarrhea.
Okay, well that's not a subject I've really been interested in.
Yeah, no, it's a medical term. That's why. That's like saying, hey, masticate feces and expire, instead of saying eat shit and die.
Or say be fruitful and multiply rather than go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Isn't
So-
that, was it, oh, bless your heart, as they say in the South?
Oh, bless your heart.
Well, that's careful. That phrase, as Barry and I can both attest to, that can mean many different things. It's very context driven.
It's also
Yes.
very term. It's a term of endearment as well. So
It could be endearment, it could be pity, it can be insult, it could be a lot of things. It's very context heavy.
I've never heard it used as an insult.
Oh, really?
It's usually a very softball insult, kind of more like it's like, oh, you
Like a
dumb
Southerner
idiot.
looking at a Northerner, looking
Well,
at you. Oh, you're a Yankee, aren't you? Well, bless your soul.
It's like you dumb idiot. That's kind of it's not really
Yeah.
it's denigrating, so it's kind of an insult, but it's not really meant to be insulting.
It's not. The origin was never meant to be really insulting. It's more like pity or something like that.
Yeah, but pity is not always a polite, nice thing either.
Yeah, misplaced pity can also be kind of insulting.
Well, empathy.
You're gay? Oh, you just don't know how to talk to girls. That's all.
You just haven't had the
Let me help you. Or what was that movie with Divine? One of those Divine movies that they had the aunt that was talking to her kid, and he was like, I'm worried that you'll be a heterosexual. You'll celebrate wedding anniversaries and have a dull and boring life.
Right.
So the Sloppy Seconds you sampled it in a song. I just can't remember the name of the movie.
Excellent.
I would say like the N-word. I usually don't hide the fact of what it is because I find the idea of saying the N-word is a pointless euphemism. We all know what I'm thinking. We all know what I'm gonna say. So why not say it? It's like the term cunt. Like a lot of girls in America just like the word cunt, but I use it very like an Aussie does. I'm like, oh yeah, sure thing, cunt. Like it's more of a term of endearment. With the N-word, people say, well, I'm saying not the N-word, but saying nigga. And to me, it's just like, well, that's the same thing. That's just lazy English. It's like typing "you are" for "your" rather than actually "your."
The Henry
Your
Miller said,
versus your actually annoys me, and I'm not a grammar Nazi at all, but that one annoys me.
I am a Nazi.
Then-
I mean, a grammar Nazi is what I am.
Henry Miller thought that the word cunt was the most beautiful word in the English language.
It was, or you thought it was?
No, he thought it was. He thought it was like a beautiful word. And he would always use it like, he would use it in speaking about it. Like he would say, you have the most beautiful cunt I've ever seen. But he never said it in a derogatory, he never meant it in a derogatory manner. Like, again, Aussies and some British, you cunts.
Yeah. Like I called my mom a cunt once, and when I lived with my grandparents, and that was the only time I used it in a derogatory way. And she's like, don't ever call me that again. I don't like that word. And I'm like, but you use the word pussy. It's the same thing. Also, don't be a cunt, and I won't call you one. And she goes to my grandparents, and she was like, you're not going to believe what she just said. She called me a cunt. And my grandmother ended up saying, like, I don't even know why she's here. This is like, they take the word so seriously.
Well, there's a reply to that where they say, I would call you a cunt, but you lack the depth and the warmth.
Oof. That's a rare insult. There's a whole subreddit for those.
Yeah. I always enjoyed that one.
What were you going to say, Frank?
I was going to ask your opinion on one of the tech stories that I was going to cover tonight.
Go ahead.
I didn't end up covering a lot of my tech stuff because while I love InfoSec, right now I find you infinitely more interesting. So we have this guy in our community. Hey,
Frank, real fast. Down.
All right. So we have this guy in our community named Richard Stallman. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He is like one of the big Linux guys. He's kind of credited by a lot of people being like next to Linus Torvalds, the guy who Linux is actually named after, being one of the biggest contributors to the Linux project. And GNU as well, which is a separate thing which nobody cares about right now.
What about Terry Davis?
Don't start. Anyway.
Go ahead.
So Richard Stallman had said some controversial stuff, and he was also the head of the Free Software Foundation, a big company. people didn't like what he said. Essentially, he had said something along the lines of some people interpreted it as condoning pedophilia, because he said that he thought that if somebody was young enough to was underage but gave consent, that no crime happened there, which I think is a pretty controversial opinion. We don't want to really cover that, but
Yeah,
what
so far I agree with him.
the fallout from that, right? They took him out of his organization that he started, and they kicked him out. Like, even though he was on the board, he got kicked out. And then after some review and also a lot of people bitching about it, they put him back. And then when they put him back, a lot of companies, one of them being this very large company that makes a Linux distribution, they were like, "Hey, we're going to use this as an excuse to get the hell out of the Free Software Foundation." I think it's Red Hat, and I think the reason that they did this, wanted to leave, was actually because they had pulled their free software project called CentOS a while ago, a few months ago. Essentially, this was like it could do everything their paid product could do. In some places, it could do it better, and it was free. And they just killed it because they didn't want to continue to maintain something and pay people to work on source code and shit when they weren't making a profit off of it, right?
I should point out that IBM owns Red Hat.
IBM owns Red Hat now?
Yep.
They've owned it for like almost a year now. Yeah.
I didn't know that. But anyway, Red Hat withdrew for now from the Stallman-led Free Software Foundation. There was even an open letter put out in the community, which goes on to say it's remove him from all leadership positions for this one controversial topic that he raised. Now, my question is not so much about the thing that he raised, but your opinion on taking somebody who has I'm going to compare him to our friend here, who had some Me Too statements thrown against him, right? Mm-hmm. If Richard Stallman spent like his whole life working on this project and people love this thing, everybody uses it, right? Mm-hmm. And then he said something stupid, something thoughtless, regardless of whether he meant it or whatever the whole context was. Should we just forget about all those contributions and like throw them out, cast them out, be like, you can't even work from the foundation you started anymore?
Yes.
Should we like do that with people in general? Or should we have like a civilized discourse and maybe explain to them why what they said might not be appropriate, but not at the same time try to destroy their life and cancel them?
No, I think he should be canceled.
Okay.
People have a special spot in their lives for things involving children, and that might be part of it. Because when you start talking about underage children and sex, you're crossing a line that some people, they would destroy a person's entire life over it. That's where that line is.
Yeah,
okay.
They often say like the cure for pedophilia is a bullet to the brain. Like I see this posted by leftists and conservatives quite often. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk
Go
about Richard Stallman. He made some weird comments. Okay, is the guy? Does he have a very high IQ? Okay, is like above 150.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people who have really high IQs, they are what's called self-absorbed. Okay, and I have lots of friends who are just sky high, learn to play chess at 6 and everything else, and sometimes they're stupid because they're so smart, and they so they make some kind of logical, rational statement to them that is really not appropriate, or it just doesn't make sense to the rest of the world.
Almost like they're a high functioning autist, right?
That's correct.
It's like you're so intelligent you don't really know how to communicate with normies, I would say, because it's a different way of speaking. Christopher Hitchens spoke very differently than Stephen Fry, and Stephen Fry is not as intelligent as Christopher Hitchens. I would say it's the same way like Trump versus Obama. Like people say Obama was well spoken. I don't think he was well spoken. I think he's intelligent. I just don't think he's well spoken. But I think it's if Richard had said something like that, I think that, let's discuss it. Where is he coming from? Why is he thinking this? And maybe try to convince him why he's wrong, or understand like, hey, we get what you're trying to say, but here's probably a better way to phrase it. Here's a way you could edit what you said into more profound, more acceptable means.
The thing is, nobody does that for anything.
Yeah, they don't.
They
That's right.
don't. There's no awards for acknowledging being nice. There's no Academy Award for correcting people. Okay, you get more for calling a person out and destroying their lives than you do for educating them on why what they did was wrong. Those
Yeah.
are just the facts of life. Number one, but number two, no matter how you dress it up, sticking your dick in an underage child is not going to be a topic that people are going to go with.
Yeah, at least not.
They're not unless. Okay, I will tell you this: there is a double standard there. Okay,
Yeah.
there is a double standard. If you have a high school teacher who has sex with a student, if it's a male teacher and a female student, it's pitchforks and crosses. If it's a female teacher and a male student, the male student becomes the hero of the school.
Yeah, good on that kid. Nice.
And that is a double standard that's out there.
It is. Yeah, nice. Yeah, it really is. And I think if you're going to present it's kind of like Milo Yiannopoulos when he was on the Drunken Peasants with TJ Kirk, the Amazing Atheist, where he actually got, he lost a lot of his credibility because he simply said that he believed he could consent at the age of 13 when he had sex or when he was raped. He said he could consent. He never said other kids can consent. He just thought he could consent. And I do think there are some levels of intelligence and self-awareness that some 13-year-olds may be able to technically consent, but I don't think consent is based entirely on like the milestone of hitting 18.
Well,
if you're going to talk about
from a
like,
legal perspective, it is.
Yeah. If he's going to talk about what he was doing, I think Richard should really preface a lot of information, studies, and define things so people have a better, clear understanding of what he's trying to say rather than just saying what he said. I think that may have ruined his credibility, unfortunately.
Well, the thing is, he didn't even. I mean, would you, after hearing him say that, even if it was credible, would you let your underage kids around him?
Yes.
Okay. That's something that a lot of people would disagree with. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying you'd be in the minority.
We were talking about another person who's been accused of being a pedophile before, right?
Jessica, you need
Mr. Emmanuel Goldstein.
Right.
Right. So there's still a lot of underage kids who come to 2600 meetings, right? So apparently some adults either are not giving a shit what their kids are doing or have decided that maybe it's okay. Despite
also keep in mind, in Emmanuel's case, it's not underage children, it's specifically boys. That's what he's been accused of.
Yeah, I'm aware. I know all.
And the thing is,
I've also my friend who's actually better friends with him than I am, and I do admit I'm friends with him. So okay, I'm a little biased. One of my good friends who goes by the moniker Night Owl online has, and also another friend Zio, and both of them work for the same place. They're good friends. So they explained to me that this was all started as a slander campaign about a long time ago, whatever the fuck it was, and that it just took off from there because he has such poor social skills that when he's around people always assume he's flirting with them just because he's trying to be friendly. Like he's making an over effort to come off as a friendly, likable person because in reality he doesn't have the social skills to really communicate and act properly.
I spent the better part of 5 years working with him, both on Hope and on the radio show and on other projects.
Radio Salter?
And I never, under any circumstance, I've never seen anything to substantiate the accusations against him. And I've always said that. It's like I have never seen him say or do anything that would lend any credibility to the accusation. And I want to make sure you understand. I'm not indicting him in the least. In fact, I don't say I've defended him because a lot of people say, well, I have proof. And I'm like, great, show it to me. And all of a sudden the proof is gone. But
some of the things that
I've never seen it.
Right? When I was at a meeting once, Emmanuel's hanging out with this kid who's like maybe 12 or 13, right? And the kid's showing him this Arduino project he did. He's really proud of, and he's taking a real interest. He's giving him some suggestions. He's like, "You should read this book and learn about this." The meeting ends. This is a kid who's like 13 or 14. Emmanuel doesn't know like where the kid lives or any of that shit. Emmanuel's about to go home on the subway. He says to the kid, "Hey, do you want to come with me on the subway or on the walk to the subway?" Now, a person like me would kind of look at that if I didn't know him and think, oh, shit, maybe he's trying to get that kid to go home with him, right? But but I do know him, and I knew he was just concerned for the kids' safety because
Mhm.
we're in freaking Manhattan at 53rd and Lexington, and
Right.
well, that's not the most dangerous neighborhood. Walking to the subway sometimes can be a little dangerous at night, especially if you're a kid, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't
But
think, you know.
then
So I-
again, kids in New York City grow up fast that way.
Whereas if we were talking about Captain Crunch, he's definitely a pedo. I have no doubt in my mind he's a pedo. Whether or not he's ever acted on it, I don't know, but I do know he's tried to give kids massages without their consent and offered them back to his apartment, offered them to come back to his apartment and shit. And that guy's a pedo. But Emmanuel, no, maybe not. Time to go.
I have to get going.
Yeah, I kind of want to go hang out with you there too. So I'm gonna cut my cast short.
Okay.
All right,
Guys,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I appreciate it, Autumn. I'm glad to you're on the cast here, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks
you.
for coming.
Also,
Hopefully you will
Barry,
join us again.
I like your avatar because it really matches your voice. Like I think of like a early 20th century man talking because like your voice matches that avatar that you have right there.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. But yeah, it was fun talking to all of you. It was really interesting, but I'm sorry I had to get going.
That's fine. Hopefully
Maybe
you
have me
join us
on when the
again.
book is finally released.
All right.
Or you could just, keep coming to the cast.
Or you can do that. Make me an unofficial member. Just kidding.
Or we can make you an official member.
Okay.
All right.
Really.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we had a great cast. I'm sorry I didn't cover a lot of tech stuff. If you are interested, the show notes are at the same address they're always at, and there are those same articles I would have covered if something more interesting hadn't come up. And you can read them. And enjoy them.
Windows broke a lot of printers this week. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it was way before this week. It was about 2 weeks ago. I suffered through it myself.
And I got my Raspad 3 in. You're going to have to envy me because now I can put a Raspberry Pi in a tablet.
Ooh.
Oh, nice.
I can do the same thing. All right, guys. It's been real. So if you are interested in the InfoSec section of this cast, definitely check the show notes. There is some good shit in there. And enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for always joining us. And we really do appreciate all of you who come, especially those who comment live in the YouTube stream. We really think you guys are great. You add a lot to this show. Even though it's done live and recorded, your comments do get shown when the people rewatch this later on YouTube. So you guys are even kind of like a part of this cast, despite you just making little comments there. And we do appreciate you. So have a great night, everybody. Stay safe. Stay warm.
Stay alive out there.
Stay alive.
All
Don't
right.
get too crazy.
Ending the cast in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're out.
Later.